Choji's woke up for the day and got prepared, but he's frozen at his front door. His father Choza invites him to sit to discuss a few things. Kurenai is waiting out of sight outside. She doesn't want her presence to add pressure to Choji. However, if he doesn't participate, then neither do his team partners. For the sake of Sakura and Shino, he needs to find his courage. Choza tells Choji that the Akamichi clan are a family of strong, loyal, and loving men and women. He emphasizes that Choji's fear of loss or reliving what he's already gone through is a sign of how gentle he is. And there's no shame in being gentle. But if Choji doesn't step up, his teammates could suffer. Instead of a stranger, it could be someone he loves dearly. It's a hard truth to learn, but the protector, the bruiser, the muscle in Ino Shikacho has always been the Akamichi. He might not have the team he wants, but he still has teammates and friends all the same that need his strength, his loyalty, and his love. Choza tells him that it's not expected to all of a sudden feel better. But if he can't take that first step forward, then he'll never take the rest of the steps. Sometimes everyone has to face their worst fears to push through to better times. And there may be a next time that he faces loss again, but he has friends surrounding him that will rise to protect him when he needs it too. That's what the leaf is all about. Choji doesn't have to protect everyone, because everyone protects each other. He asks Choji if he can face the Chunin exams, and Choji meekly nods. He tells Choji that even the Chunin exams can be a brutal experience, but if Choji can rise to the challenge, his very courage will inspire his team. Choza reminds his son that medical ninjutsu isn't necessary if no one's harmed. Strive to be the best protector, the greatest guardian. Swallowing hard, Choji gets to his feet and steps out the front door. Meanwhile, Ino has an odd anxiety as butterflies fill her stomach. As she goes over her various ninja tools and scrolls, her mouth becomes dry, and she feels her heartbeat hasten. Nauseated, she opens her bedroom window and sees Kiba and my guy waiting outside. She calls out to them to pick up Rock Lee first. She's not really ready yet. Mike Guy tells her Rock Lee's doctor has said he shouldn't compete, so he's going to try and get them in as a two-man team. Shivering, her anxiety worsens. It's a sunny, warm day, but she's getting the chills. Trying to keep her voice steady, she tells Guy that there's no way Lee would let some petty exhaustion hold him back. Guy agrees with her, but ultimately it's not their decision sometimes. Panicking a little bit that she's run out of time, Ino asks them to wait just a little longer. Kiba groans that they just don't have that much time left. There's a closing time for the exams start. Forcing her concerns into a metaphorical ball, Ino collects her things and walks outside, keeping the facade that all is well. Guy assures them they will stop by the hospital just in case, but interrupting their walk is Rock Lee himself. He looks like Ino feels sick. Guy asks him if he snuck out the window or something, and Lee says it doesn't matter. There is nothing that'll stop him from entering these exams. Guy looks him over in quiet contemplation. Opening the gates for the first time generally carries an inordinate amount of exhaustion along with it that doesn't pass for several days. However, Kiba is more fired up than ever, and Ino seems... Guy turns to the whole team and tells them it's their decision. If all three want to enter, he won't stop them. Kiba's already chomping at the bit, and Rock Lee tells him yes no matter what. In a very slight hesitation that only Guy catches, Ino also says yes. The pause was so short, Guy was sure her fellow Genin did not notice. But he knows there's something off about her demeanor today. She's usually exasperated by their antics, but as Kiba makes exaggerated comments to pump himself up, she doesn't protest at all. And then there's Naruto. He tried waking up extra early to catch his dad before work, but he must have been at the Hokage building all night. So Naruto rushes to the office to speak with his dad before the Chunin exams begin. Never would he admit to Asuma that he's come to rely so heavily on the Flying Raijin, but his dad will surely give him another kunai if he asks. He'd give the explanation of where his went later, sure that his dad would let him leave because he's short on time. As he gets to the building, he notices two temporary structures have been built on either side of the walkway leading to the Hokage's building. One bears the sigil of wind, the other of lightning. When Naruto reaches the doors, he notes that there are two Anbu standing in front. They both step in his way when he tries to enter. He tells them it's him, Naruto. You know, the Hokage's son? They tell him that not even the Hokage's son gets in without an appointment today. He begs them at this point to let him in. It'll just be a few moments. Or you know what? He knows how to climb walls now. Maybe they should just let him pass before he makes a scene. They repeat that he's not getting in. He wonders aloud how his dad would feel learning that his trusted Anbu are barring his only son. At this point, the Anbu just ignore him. If only he was any good at the clone jutsu so he could at least fluster them as he tried to get past. He tells them that he could use the flying Raijin to get to his dad's kunai. One of the Anbu shakes slightly, and the other one encourages him to do just that and see what happens. Grumbling, Naruto turns to leave only to hear the shaking Anbu laugh a little bit, unable to hold it in. Naruto turns back to them and tells them he'll remember their masks. They're not getting away with this. Both Anbu shake their heads at him, amused, and he stomps away in annoyance. We have to remember that the Anbu are anonymous. They all know who Naruto is, but he has no idea who any of them are. I mean, he probably knows who they are when they're off duty, but with the masks, he couldn't even begin to guess. So they're not making fun of him as much as they already know what kind of bedlam he likes to cause, and the idea of interrupting a three-way Kage meeting is absurd. Team Kakashi, minus the Kakashi, are on their way together to the registration hall. They're walking in silence and minding their own business when Neji holds up a hand to the other two and nods at the substantial sand on their stone path. Glancing into the bushes on their right, Neji sees a red-haired boy with a great gourd on his back. That's right, Gaara is here. Beside him, much better hidden, is Kankuro. As Neji has spotted them with his keen eyes, both openly walk out of the bushes and onto the path. Kankuro notes that he was just wanting to size up some leaf shinobi before they got in there. He compliments Neji for spotting them so easily. Neji frowns at the sand and tells them he saw it from a mile away, including their third partner sitting on the rooftop overhead. Kankuro notes that Neji's perception is kind of creepy and decides to shift focus to the other two. He tells them it's obvious who are the sheep of the team and who is the wolf. Sasuke just stares at him, wondering why the first thing these sand ninja want to do is insult them. In a gust of wind, the third, Temari, lands on Gaara's other side. She notes how strange it is that someone so boring and unremarkable as Shikamaru is even with the other two. Shikamaru looks around, wondering why anyone's even talking to him. Sasuke notes that Gaara is clearly the wolf of these other two sheep, and when he looks at a sheep, all he sees is an easy meal. Kankuro challenges him to put his money where his mouth is, but Sasuke laughs at the challenge and nods for his team to continue along with him. Ignoring Kankuro and Temari, Sasuke and Neji both can't help but maintain eye contact with Gaara as they walk by. He's the shortest one of the three, but he felt so much bigger. Kankuro continues to call challenges to them as they walk away, but his words are just that, words. Going to their meeting spot, they wait uncomfortably long before Kakashi arrives. Sasuke reminds him that they don't have infinite time today. Why does he always do this? Kakashi agrees and apologizes profusely, but reminds them that they don't need their jonin to enter. Neji groans and then asks why Kakashi asked them to meet him. Kakashi apologizes again and tells them he didn't think time would be so against them. He tells them they'd better run to make it in time. Cursing at their careless teacher, all three sprint to the registration hall. As a result, all four teams arrive as the doors are about to close. Naruto, Kiba, Tenten, and Rock Lee trip over each other as they try to barge through the door. Meanwhile, Neji, Sasuke, Sakura, Shino, and Shikamaru walk over them to get in. Lagging a little bit behind, Choji, Hinata, and Ino enter last, and the doors slam shut. And so the Chunin exams have begun. I mentioned nostalgia in last week's episode. Well, I love how Phase 1 worked in canon, so it works the same here. Ibiki remains their proctor for this phase, and there are Chunin watchdogs on either side of the room to spot cheaters. The teams also aren't sitting together for obvious reasons, and we'll get to see some alternative interactions as a result. First, let's note some major differences in who's present and who isn't. The Sound Ninja are here. This is pretty important because Orochimaru obviously isn't in the same role that he is in canon. We'll explore later why they are a Sound Ninja here. But included with them are Yoroi, Misumi, and a third man who's as covered as the other two with no distinguishable features. These three are not masquerading as Leaf Shinobi. They are instead sporting their sound headbands. Again, this will be explained later, I'm just letting everyone know now. Kabuto is not present. Also, the Cloud team that are here consists of Omoi, Karui, and Atsui. Atsui is a little bit older, but he's only a chunin during Shippuden, so I'll allow that he's a late bloomer. And of course, the same sand team as in canon, Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara. The rules for Phase 1 are identical to canon, but I'll reiterate just in case anyone needs a reminder. Genin are presented with 9 extraordinarily difficult questions that they shouldn't be able to solve. This encourages them to cheat, but the chunin on either side of the room spot cheaters and put a strike for each time you're caught cheating. After being caught 5 times, you automatically fail the exam and are escorted out with your team. There are plants in the classroom that know all the answers, and it is up to the genin to identify who they are and get their answers without leaving their seat. 45 minutes into the exam, they are presented with the option of answering the 10th question. However, if they agree to it and answer incorrectly, they won't only fail, but be barred from ever becoming a chunin in the future. But if they forfeit, they can leave now and try again during a later exam. Ultimately, though, the exam itself is a lie. It doesn't matter how many questions you get right, as long as you have the courage to get to the 10th question. So you're encouraged to cheat, but technically if you don't cheat, you can still pass. That's the only flaw in the entirety of Phase 1, and I'd say calling it a flaw is a stretch. Because the Leaf Genin arrive literally last minute, the exam begins straight away, and they're jumbled up in the seating. Everyone immediately notes the difficulty of the questions. Naruto's so stunned by the questions that he forgets to write his name. He glances around the classroom, shocked that everyone is actually writing answers. Shikamaru picks up his sheet and studies the questions. Shrugging, he begins to answer them. If Neji has trouble, he can simply use his Byakugan. If Sasuke has trouble, well, it shouldn't be too bad. Remember, the Sharingan gives good reflexes in my rewrite, but it can't copy basic movements, only jutsu. But Sasuke's pretty smart, he shouldn't have too many issues. Omoi plays with a knife while he's answering his questions. Picking his teeth with the knife, he reflects the light from outside into the eyes of the Chunin watchdogs. Trying to act aloof, the Chunin struck by Omoi's redirected light cringe a little bit and blink rapidly to appear as inconspicuous as they can. Meanwhile, Omoi's wondering if this gives him any kind of advantage. It's almost something he did while bored, and less to take advantage to cheat. Karui is sitting a few rows behind him and spots what he's doing to the watchdogs. Feeling this strange sense of competition, Karui starts doing the exact same thing, and soon both forget about the test to see who can blind the most watchdogs. Atsui, on the other hand, remains level-headed enough to take advantage of the blinded Chunin and time his peeks to his neighbor. Because a whole one side of the classroom is being repeatedly blinded by 2 immature ninja, all the other genin get to take advantage as well. Shino gets the answers easily with his bugs and communicates the information back to his teammates. And since they're now on the same team, Hinata isn't placed beside Naruto, so he doesn't even have the option to cheat off her. Instead, he sneaks a peek at Kagari of the Rain. He hopes that the other ninja's blindfold means he's actually blind. Shifting over as slowly as he can, Naruto wonders if he can fake fumble with his pencil and then peek when he reaches for it. It's so simple, it just might work. Meanwhile, Tenten's using her ceiling mirrors to reflect her answers to Naruto, but he couldn't be more oblivious. As Naruto attempts to make his move, Kagari turns his head straight at Naruto and crooks it before nodding at Naruto's blank paper. At this point, Naruto experiences a muted crisis that a blind man can answer written questions better than he can. Looking at his blank sheet, Naruto wonders if he could just make it into an origami figure for all the good staring at it is doing him. He thinks that maybe if he enters the wrong information on purpose but confidently, someone else will make the mistake of cheating off of him. Sakura, as in canon, answers all these questions correctly. It's definitely very challenging, but nothing she can't handle. Meanwhile, Ino leans over her paper as if she were falling asleep and discreetly uses her mind transfer on someone a few rows up. As she enters into his body, she hears a Chunin call someone out for being caught too many times. Well, this is her first attempt, so it wasn't her. She looks down at the man's sheet, disappointed that he only got 3 answers so far. A hand falls on the possessed man's shoulder, and Ino looks up at one of the Chunin watchdogs as he tells her she's been disqualified. Ino realizes the callout was for the very man she performed the mind transfer on. Having possessed so many animals recently, she almost forgets the small intricacies of controlling another human being's body, and when she stands, she knocks her chair back to clatter loudly. As nearby genin look up, she realizes she could slow down others, and starts making a fuss that she wasn't cheating. She even reaches down to her neighbor's exam sheet and rips it before several Chunin are suddenly restraining the man. Retreating from his body, Ino returns to herself as the man confusedly shouts questions about what they're doing to him. Writing down the answers that he had, she realizes that she can just possess several people and make several more problems. Every time, she gets a couple more answers and then returns to obviously cheating so that genin gets caught, and then she can make another ruckus. But the mind transfer jutsu on a person is far more draining than simple animals. After the third one, Ino feels a little dizzy, but she's also had a lot of fun causing commotions through others. Eventually, she fills her sheet and possesses the ninja beside Rock Lee to convey the answers to him as discreetly as she can. She repeats this for Kiba as well. Naruto, meanwhile, has basically given up entirely. Unless someone helps him out, he has no idea how he can steal a peek at anyone else's test. Instead, he slouches so his arm can hang under his desk and he can practice the Windblade Jutsu. He's going to die of anxiety if he just sits there in silence. At least this is a distraction until he notices something that can help him. Ibiki announces to the class that there's 10 minutes left. No one's looking at Naruto but his teammates. He's oblivious to Tenten's attempts to help, and Hinata can't without it being obvious. Ino and her team are just waiting for the end now, and she decides to mind transfer one more person just for fun. She gets into the mind of a girl who happens to be sitting next to Naruto, who's crumpled up into a ball at this point, mostly hidden beneath the desk. She sees his paper has a variety of doodles on it, and nothing else. As Ibiki announces the 5 minutes remaining, Naruto grits his teeth and accidentally exerts a great burst of chakra. The result launches wind into the floor before splashing out in every direction, lifting, mixing, and confusing the exam papers. In the chaos, Ino slides her victim's paper over to Naruto. He has no idea what's happening as she jumps into the air to try and catch the sheets, only to be tackled by more Chunin. Yet again, the Chunin have launched to work to make sure the sheets make it back to their rightful owners. Seeing that Naruto quote-unquote still has a paper, they assume he held onto it. Naruto doesn't know what happened, but nor does he care. He now has an exam that's fully answered. Back in her body, Ino wonders why she helped Naruto. She decides that it's better for a Leaf Shinobi to pass than any of these other nations. Ino sees Naruto furiously writing something on the sheet as Ibiki counts down the last 10 seconds. As the timer goes, Naruto lifts his hands into the air, giggling in his good fortune. Ibiki remarks that this is by far the most rambunctious group he has had in a very long time. In a scenario of stealth, he didn't think he'd see so much explosive ninjutsu creating such chaos. He notes that this is grounds for a rule change in future exams to prevent such a thing from happening again. Nonetheless, he offers compliments to those who were less focused on cheating, but more on disruption. Ibiki explains the rules to the 10th question, which forces more teams to give up early. Naruto's too happy about his situation to even consider giving up. Choji looks back at Shino, who nods at him, and Sakura, who flips him the thumbs up. They're still confident that he can perform, so he won't back down quite yet. Though the first part of the quiz was a breeze, Kiba is concerned for Rock Lee being able to retain focus for whatever comes next. If push comes to shove, he can cover for Lee's weakness on the field, but in the classroom there's little he can do. Just as in canon, several other teams back out and numbers dwindle. And finally, Ibiki congratulates the group that stayed with the glad news that they've passed the entire test. Again, just as in canon, Anko bursts through the window in a bombastic flourish that invites the remaining genin to follow her to phase 2 of the exams. As everyone shuffles out of the room and reunites with their groups, Ino catches up to Naruto first. She jabs him with an elbow and tells him that he owes her one. For what? He asks. Ino tells him that she passed him that test with all the answers. When Naruto says the answers didn't even matter in the end, Ino tells him that if that wasn't the trick to the exam, they both know he would have failed. Grumbling that he didn't need any help, Ino tells him that if he remembered these kinds of favors, he'd have more friends. She then runs back to her group. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, Ibiki's picking up the sheets and stops when he gets to a particular paper. He shakes his head and crumples it into a ball. All its questions were answered flawlessly. However, the name at the top was scritched out, and Naruto's name was written under it. The genin are given 1 hour before the start of Phase 2 and are brought to the outskirts of the Forest of Death. The smarter teams start working on strategies as simple as how they to travel through such an ominous forest. Others simply try socializing amongst themselves. Karui, for example, attempts to insert herself into the gathering circle of Leaf Genin. She introduces herself as the up-and-coming prodigy of the village hidden in the clouds. This attempt at bragging is cut down immediately by Omoi. He asserts that she's nowhere close to such a thing. Calmly turning to her teammate, Karui casually walks up to him before grabbing him by the collar and throttling him. As the Leaf Genin see the lighter side of the Cloud Ninja and their circle opens up a little bit, Kankuro then steps in. Karui immediately stops attacking Omoi when she notices Kankuro approach. Her funny annoyance turns to hard suspicion, and she rests a hand on the hilt of her sword. Her demeanor transforms completely when compared to how she approached the Leaf Genin. Kankuro tries to introduce himself, but he's already had a bad run-in with Team Kakashi. Both Leaf and Cloud passive-aggressively push him out of the circle. Dejected, Kankuro shrugs and walks back to Temari and Gaara. We get a few moments of whispering from Kankuro to his team. He tells them that they should specifically target the Cloud Ninja at the next chance they get. Gaara eyes Omoi and Atsui as all three join to introduce themselves to the Leaf Genin. Looking back to Kankuro, he tells his brother to fight his own battles. Before instructions on their next phase begins, a Jonin hands out a data book to everyone that contains information about each other. They explain that these books are all the help they're going to get for the upcoming challenge. Skimming through the book, Sakura is shocked at how much information is shared about their potential opponents. Since she already knew about the Leaf Genin, she flips to the Sand Ninja. Not just techniques and tools, but even chakra natures are listed in the book. Sakura mumbles to Shikamaru beside her. She wonders why they would share so much information about potential enemies. Shikamaru nods in agreement, glancing between his page about Temari and then at the girl herself. He never would have pegged her for a water type. Anko interrupts the whisperings of the Genin and their databooks to explain the rules of the Forest of Death. The goal during this phase is to reach the tower at the center of the forest through any means possible, and they just have 5 days to do it. Though they discourage deadly violence, it isn't outright against the rules. However, if they reach the tower without first accomplishing their collection objective, they will be locked out. So what's their collection objective? As Anko asks this, a Jonin walks to each team and hands them a scroll. She explains that the scrolls are one of 2 kinds. Each team either has an Earth Scroll or a Heaven Scroll. The first assignment regarding these scrolls is to never open them. Their objective is to collect one of each scroll. The catch to this objective is that there is a third kind of scroll hidden within the forest itself. Hell Scrolls are the third kind of scroll each team needs to find. She tells them that there are more than enough Hell Scrolls for each team to have one. They'll be battling each other to attain one type of scroll, and then battling their environment and dangers yet unknown for the other type of scroll. Beyond this cryptic information, the Genin are given no more help. Once a team attains all 3 scrolls, they are to make it to the center tower. After they've arrived at the tower, they can rest until all the teams have made it. On one hand, they need to be careful in the forest. On the other, the sooner they reach the tower with a finished mission, the more rested they'll be for what comes next. When Anko finishes this instruction, Jonin lead the teams to the forest's entrances. These entrances are equidistant from one another for equal opportunity. No one is given a countdown, and the gates just suddenly fly open. Some teams, like the Sand, casually walk inside. Others, like the Cloud, sprint in as fast as they can. They need only walk for 30 seconds before the outside world is vanished. Once within the depths of the forest, we get the usual introduction of crazy creatures. Giant slugs and bugs, swamps, snakes, little things that go bump in the night. Within a few minutes of entering the forest, Team Guy is jumped by another team. Rock Lee is as shaky as he's ever been, so Kiba takes the lead so Ino can weave some ninjutsu. The attacking team are the Rain Ninja. Ino quickly throws out a water prison that's ineffective to their already laid genjutsu. She shouts to Kiba that she can't do ninjutsu until they cut through the genjutsu. Biting his thumb, Kiba throws down a summoning that brings forth 3 ninja dogs to sniff out their enemies with him. As those 3 dogs work in tandem with Ino, Kiba and Akamaru catch out one of the 3 Rain Ninja on his own. Akamaru runs around to flank the ninja as Kiba conjures pellets of rock to launch in a volley at him. When he tries to form some hand seals, Akamaru clamps down on his left arm. Before he can deal with the puppy, Kiba has closed the distance to stab a kunai into his right arm. Both arms injured, the Rain Ninja tries to escape to range. However, Kiba's specialty is close-range combat, and once that distance is closed, it's nearly impossible to escape him. A quick combination of taijutsu drops the ninja to the ground, and Kiba chokes him out. Simultaneous to this, his summoned dogs very quickly sniff out the real bodies of the Rain Ninja. Once found out, the dogs bite into the ninja, distracting them and dispelling any remaining genjutsu. Ino throws a wall of water to force them to keep a distance as they shake off the dogs. The closer of the 2 remaining ninja charges through the wave and walks right into her mind transfer jutsu. Her unconscious body falls into Rock Lee's arms as the possessed Rain Ninja turns to fight his comrade. Confused by the betrayal, the 3rd ninja takes a purely defensive stance. Pulling kunai from his pack, Ino begins slashing at the 3rd ninja. She distracts him for long enough that Kiba sneaks in behind and lands a hard kick to the side of his head. Ino gets him to then put her in a submission hold so she can release the jutsu. In no time flat, they've defeated the Rain Ninja, and they've attained 2 of the 3 scrolls they need. They made sure not to kill the ninja, but they will still pull their bodies to cover nonetheless. Kiba tells them that there are far more savage and sinister ninja in the world. His sisters tormented him with stories since he was a kid. Rock Lee insists that genin probably aren't that dangerous. Ino remarks that maybe his sister was trying to scare him for the sake of scaring him. Several seconds pass before he realizes that she only seemed to tell him these stories whenever he was annoying her. So Ino pats him on the shoulder while he grieves his naivety. She tells him that the stories at least have some truth to them. Rock Lee tells them that he will take part in the next fight. However, both of them encourage him to rest for as long as needed. They wonder what kind of record they could break if they got to the center of the tower as an effectively 2-man team. Lee is not humored by the thought. He does not want to succeed off the back of others. Meanwhile, Team Kakashi has been plunged into complete darkness. They're lucky to have Neji to guide them through the dark cavern they've fallen into. Just as with Team Guy, danger befell them minutes after Phase 2 began. While walking through an inconspicuous clearing, the ground turned to tar. Logs on either side, suspended by rope, came crashing down towards them. It was only through the combined efforts of Neji and Sasuke that they fell to apparent safety. Neji saw a cavern beneath, and Sasuke conjured a strong enough fireball to cave in the ground. Now, Neji led the other 2 blind ninja to safety. Much to Shikamaru's chagrin, Neji and Sasuke have immediately descended into arguments. They're fighting about who should rightly lead the group. Neji says he's the natural choice since he can see the danger coming well ahead of time. Sasuke discounts this, citing that they clearly just walked into a trap. If Sasuke wasn't there to help, Neji spotting the falling logs would have proved useless in actually escaping them. They don't need someone with selective perception to lead. Instead, they just need someone who's strong enough to. They get to a spot where Neji tells them to infuse chakra into their feet because there's a great cavern ahead. Sasuke tells Shikamaru not to. Neji's just doing this to demonstrate why he needs to be the leader. Shikamaru asks Neji to come to him and grabs hold of his wrist when he comes close. Then he's guided to Sasuke and systematically links them both in his shadow possession jutsu. Here, in the complete dark, his chakra is barely affected by the jutsu use. Now that they're locked to him, he tells them to stop bickering. Regardless of who has what abilities or how they performed in school, they're genin now. Officially recognized ninja should never act so infantile. If they refuse to work together while the other's the leader, then Shikamaru will have to be the leader. After an odd silence, Neji and Sasuke both agree that he can lead. A little jarred, Shikamaru remarks that they agreed rather easily. He tells them that if they decide on him, then that's that. They can't fight anymore. Sasuke shakes his head, knowing only Neji can see him. He tells them both that he doesn't want to fight, but he's been told his whole life that Hyuga are scum. It's hard to break not just from expectations, but from something that's nearly instinctive. Neji sighs. The Hyuga don't openly look down on the other clans, but behind the closed doors of the Hyuga mansion, they are referred to as the lesser clans. Neji also dislikes their haughty attitude, but like Sasuke, it's been instilled in him from a young age. Shikamaru literally facepalms. He smacks his forehead with his palm loud enough that both look in his general direction. He tells them that they were both top of class. They both hold incredible dojutsu whose perceptive abilities dwarf that of any normal human. And yet they're both blind to the fact that they both want the same thing. He points out to them that in the short term, they'll be shamed by their clans. But in the long term, if they can set aside these stupid differences, this team could make history. Nowhere in the books is there a Hyuga working with an Uchiha. They're on the precipice of great change. Great change that their families will never make, so they have to. Shikamaru also tells them that regardless of how much they argue, he's still going to try. They're making his life miserable every time they argue, but he'll push through the challenge. Sasuke nods. Again, only something that Neji can see. He agrees, on his end at least, to stop the fighting. They're no longer in competition after all, they're in cooperation. Neji nods too, to two blind people. He's still stubbornly holding on to the false pride of his clan. He looks at Sasuke, who he can see clear as day even in darkness, and furrows his brow. "You gave me that energy bar, didn't you?" he asks solemnly. Again, Sasuke nods silently. For Neji to make this step is to ask someone to walk through a brick wall. He's crippled by this ingrown superbia. Bringing a hand to his face, clutching at his head, Neji struggles in silence, ignoring that Shikamaru's released them both already. Sasuke stammers for a moment. Blanketed by darkness leaves him feeling exposed and weak, naked even. His heart flutters with the admission he's trying to make. The duality of his home life versus his ninja life has left him splintered. Now he's being forced to make the choice to work with what his clan considers scum. If ever there was a time to make life-changing decisions, maybe it's now. Sasuke tells them that he does not live for the Uchiha, but for the village. His family was killed in the massacre. What's left is a hollow shell that happens to go by the same name. He does not relish turning on his family, but he's not. For as long as his family is a part of the village, he will stand by them too. Neji still has a frog in his throat as he struggles to answer Sasuke's profound confession. After a very long silence, he finally conjures the courage to speak up. "Sasuke, I am sorry for the loss of your family. I also live for the village, not my family." Sasuke nods at him again and lifts his arm. Meeting him halfway, Neji shakes his hand. Shikamaru laughs in celebration that they've finally found common ground. The common ground is far heavier than he expected. However, hopefully this will root them in a more honorable soil. With the greatest confessions off their chests, Neji admits his wrong. There is no great fall ahead, but he does see a path to light. to the surface. As soon as light hits their faces, kunai are raining down upon them. Spotting an opening in this rain with his Sharingan, Sasuke attempts to jump through it, but his feet have sunken into a quicksand jutsu. Neji whirls in place and scatters the jutsu, dispelling its effect. With the freedom, Sasuke runs into the rain of kunai and weaves through them in an attempt to find the source. But the source meets him head-on. As if destiny's answering his call, Akane Uchiha dashes from behind a tree and clashes directly with Sasuke. The rain of kunai stop, and when Neji and Shikamaru emerge to help Sasuke, they are ambushed by a team of grass ninja. Sasuke tries to speak with Akane, who ignores any attempts and continues the onslaught. Hammering the point of his kunai into the loop of Akane's, Sasuke rips downward and tears it out of Akane's hand. Now unarmed, Sasuke ducks deftly between Akane's swings and locks onto his right primary arm. He quickly glances at his team, who are outnumbered against some grass ninja. He doesn't want to hurt Akane, but simultaneously wonders why he's in the forest with the genin. Is it possible that he was sent in to kill Sasuke? Escaping the hold, Akane shifts between several tiger and wolf strikes. Forced to drop the crane stance, Sasuke shifts to the fox stance to defend. Gripping Sasuke's hand, Akane utilizes it for the start of a fireball jutsu. "Let's see who has the better fire!" Akane shouts at him, leaping away to complete the jutsu. Mirroring his cousin, Sasuke jumps backward and forms the necessary seals for his own fireball. As he heaves a breath for the fireball, he remembers his promise to his team. He stands not for his family, but for the village. He needs to see Akane as an opponent that will fall like all the rest. Memories flash through him of his father teaching him the fireball, of Itachi helping him sharpen his use of it. Hatred boils through him of the surviving clanmates conniving for violent change. Searing heat scorches his insides as he thinks of the one responsible for killing his family. His incomplete Sharingan shifts, and his fourth Tomo appears. Swelling and releasing, Sasuke bellows out the great Dragon Flame Jutsu at his cousin. His own fireball is like a spear, impaling Akane's, and is the clear winner in this competition. Blinded by the light of his own jutsu, Akane does not have time to raise guard against Sasuke's overwhelming victory. After the fire dissipates, Sasuke runs to Akane's side to make sure he's not dead. Rolling free from Akane's unconscious body is a Hell Scroll. Reaching down, Sasuke picks up the free Hell Scroll. It's heavy in his hands, different in feeling from the Earth Scroll they already have. Slipping it in his pack, he turns back to his outnumbered allies and sprints to join them. These are the same grass ninja as we see in canon, except Orochimaru is not masquerading as one of them. Sasuke doesn't give himself the time to assess the situation as the grass begin to flank his friends. Neji is grappling with one who has caught his hands mid-strike. Leaping into the air, Sasuke throws a kick behind Neji's head, who ducks at the last second. This gives Sasuke an unguarded strike squarely in the grass ninja's face. Neji breaks from the recoiling ninja's grip and regroups with Shikamaru. Sasuke twirls in midair to properly land on his feet. Before landing, he also chucks several shuriken at the other two ninja to keep them off balance. Forming a protective semicircle around Shikamaru, Sasuke and Neji keep their attention on the two trying to flank. To keep the third ninja busy, Sasuke conjures an instant boulder that launches at him. This is one of the jutsu that Sasuke has copied and requires no hand seals to perform, though it still pulls chakra. Though Neji's able to see attacks from all directions with his Byakugan, Sasuke cannot. At several points throughout the fight, Shikamaru extremely briefly takes control of Sasuke. In these briefest of moments, Shikamaru tweaks Sasuke's stance to allow him to avoid strikes from behind. He's extremely careful in these moments because control for too long can totally disrupt Sasuke's flow. The grass ninja utilize several variations of earth jutsu to keep the ground uneven. They also throw balls of mud or rocks at Team 7 to wear them down at distance. Team 7 is unable to mount an offensive while defending against the onslaught of ninjutsu. So, Neji pulls out a scroll and releases its contents. A fount of water surges from the ground and towards the grass ninja in all directions. Everyone adapts to the change in environment as both sides leap to stand on the surface of this water. A second scroll unfurls and Neji shouts to Sasuke to bring out his clan's greatest ninjutsu. In unison, Sasuke and Neji both conjure a great spitfire of flame and a huge conical blast. Some fire hits the water's surface and produces small explosions of steam. Other fire hits trees and plant life, creating smoke. Yet more fire shoots overhead, preventing the grass ninja to leap to safety. A smattering of mist and smoke cloud their battlefield, and the water keeps their footing insecure. With the grass ninja hesitating on their next action, Sasuke closes fast and quickly outmaneuvers one. His technical taijutsu makes it easy for Sasuke to weave around and through their defenses. Every time they reach for a weapon, Sasuke knocks that hand away. Anytime they attempt a counter-strike, Sasuke tries to lock the punch in a submission to break their arm. Forced on a pure defensive, the grass ninja backs away from Sasuke. Overwhelming the grass ninja, Sasuke lands a clean, square uppercut, completely knocking the grass ninja out. Meanwhile, Shikamaru manages to pin the lone ninja in a shadow weave. The water has distorted shadows just enough to make it difficult for both sides. As light bends through the water, his shadows dance on the ground as if he were drunk. But equally, the grass ninja cannot tell how fast or accurately where the shadow's coming from. Neji's fire overhead creates stark shadows, however, allowing Shikamaru to get creative. Fingering 3 kunai with smoke bombs attached, he lobs them in quick succession high overhead. They're varying distance from one another with the light of fire overhead to create distinct points of shadow. These points survive the water's refraction of light. These circles of shadow also create perfect points for Shikamaru to connect the dots, maintain his aim, and capture the ninja. As the jutsu completes, the kunai fall back down and the smoke bombs go off. This masks and at least visually separates the remaining grass ninja from each other. Meanwhile, since the scrolls were made ahead of time, Neji is no lighter on chakra reserves than before. While his fire was spewing forth, he took the opportunity to close to his nearest foe. Unlike with the first ninja, Neji successfully lands several gentle palm strikes. Crippled quickly, the ninja loses the ability to concentrate into his feet and sinks into the water. Slowed, he can no longer leap to a distance as Neji finishes him off with several more strikes. Nodding at each other, Team Kakashi reunite beside Shikamaru. With a united front, Sasuke and Neji strike at the last grass ninja stuck by shadow possession. Though there was considerable effort in taking the grass ninja down, none of them received any injuries. With a reminder from Shikamaru, they search the grass ninja's bodies for their scroll. Uncovering it, Team Kakashi is dismayed that the grass ninja also had an earth scroll. On the other hand, Sasuke unveils the hell scroll that his cousin was carrying. Neji smiles at the realization, voicing that he had concerns about finding one. Shikamaru suggests that they find cover to rest a little and eat something before carrying on. As they turn to go, Sasuke's ears quiver and he looks to his right. He was sure that he heard the familiar high tone of metal striking metal. The forest is so thick that fights could be happening a stone's throw in any direction and no one would have a clue. While trying to enjoy a snack outside the forest, Anko is approached by a companion, Jonin. He reports to her that there are suspicious individuals around the other side of the forest, looking in. Ditching her break, she sprints with the Jonin to discover why they're there. As the 4 individuals come visible, but still too small to tell who they are, Anko watches as they dash into the forest. Cursing, she tells the Jonin to watch over the forest in her stead, because now she has to do a full investigation. The forest is outside Konoha's south walls, and remarkably close to Lord Orochimaru's lab. Anko sprints there to ask Orochimaru for aid. As a former student of Orochimaru, Anko knows how to sidestep Orochimaru's various securities that kept the average person out. Once inside, it's no time at all before she finds her former sensei. Though Orochimaru tries to greet her kindly, news that the Chunin exams have potential intruders sour his mood instantly. She hears him curse Jiraiya, who's supposed to be in charge of local security at the moment. He reminds her that there are 3 Kage in the village right now. They can't afford to let intruders in and appear weak for it. She agrees with him and asks what their next move is. He tells her to go to the Hokage's office and, discreetly, let him know of what's happened. In the meanwhile, Orochimaru will make sure the intruders are swiftly taken care of. Irritated that Orochimaru has sent her on some messenger detail, Anko dashes into the village. Depending on who the intruders are, they could be assassins from another village. They could also be Leaf Chunin or Jonin trying to relive their glory days. Regardless, an intrusion must be treated as exactly that, a substantial problem. Once she makes it to the front doors, she need only signal to the Anbu and they let her pass without a word. They know that Anko should be at the forest. For her to be here is emergency enough. I've always assumed that ninja who want to be silent have a full range of hand gestures that they could use to maintain their quiet and still communication. When she gets to the door of the meeting, she knocks and waits. An Anbu answers the door and she passes him a note for the Hokage. A few excruciating moments pass before Minato comes to the door and shuts it behind him. Urgently, Anko tells him that there are invaders in the forest. She's let Lord Orochimaru know and he's going to deal with it. Minato shrugs at her and asks what she needs him to do. He seems visibly annoyed, though perhaps not at her. Anko sags a little, annoyed again with Orochimaru. Of course Minato wouldn't want to deal with this news right now. She apologizes to him and assures him that she'll deal with it. And so we shift focus once more to Orochimaru as he walks through the forest of death. His right hand is covered in blood as he walks away from the corpse of a stone ninja. It's curious to him that they thought this was a wise decision. Perhaps the legend of the Sannin's strength has diminished over time. He can't wait for these stupid Chunin exams to be over so he can go crazy in the war. It would be the perfect opportunity to refresh fear in the enemy's eyes. Landing nearby, Jiraiya nods at Orochimaru after glancing at the body behind. Conferring, he tells Orochimaru that he took another down himself. That leaves just 2 stone ninja to take out. Orochimaru tells him that he's already found the third and will seek him out right away. All these intruders need to be taken care of before they can interact with any of the participating genin. Meanwhile, Choji, Sakura, and Shino sit atop a high branch of a tree. They're formulating their strategies on how they want to fight for the Heaven Scroll. Should they use hit-and-run tactics? Should they attempt to steal the scroll? Or would they find themselves in a head-on fight? Sakura is also going through more of the data books they were given. After flipping through the 4 ninja, she decides to go through the Leaf Ninja to see if any new abilities have been learned. While Choji insists that he's good to go and able to perform in a brawl, Sakura raises an eyebrow. The page about Choji lists him as a ninjutsu specialist, but she was sure that he was a taijutsu specialist. She thinks to ask him the question, but she hasn't seen him so animated since before his incident at the border dispute. Shino thinks if they can steal a scroll without fighting, that should obviously be their course of action. He's okay with a fight himself, he just doesn't want to fight because that's what they think is expected of them. He reiterates that they were given the permission to do anything possible to get the scrolls, and that must include stealing them. Add to the fact that they have no idea what's coming next after the Forest of Death's completion. If they have to do anything that puts strain on their chakra, then he'd rather conserve now. Choji complains that Shino's no fun, clearly trying to pump himself up for a fight. Shino reassures Choji that with the chakra bees as a new addition to his arsenal, Shino wants more than anything to see how they perform. He's managed already to blend the venom of a couple of his bugs to create a slight paralytic effect, but Shino's yet to practice against a real target. However, he's also patient and would rather wait for a fight that they couldn't avoid, rather than a fight that they for some reason wouldn't avoid. Sakura turns to her own page and notices that it's like Choji's, listing her as a ninjutsu specialist. As the realization dawns on her, she leans toward the group to inform them that the books are a lie. As they mutter amongst themselves, a shadowy assailant suddenly leaps up from behind and strikes the branch of the tree with a mighty surge of lightning. The branch disintegrates in the explosion of electricity. Choji, Sakura, and Shino are sitting in a branch way above the ground as they decide on how they want to approach their task. Sakura is going through the data book while Shino and Choji discuss their options. As Sakura spots misinformation in the book and tries to share this, they're attacked from behind. However, something else was happening in these moments. Far below them on the ground rings the distinct clash of metal. Peering cautiously over the edge, Shino watches as 2 teams confront one another. They are the Sound and the Cloud. Shino suggests that they should leave and avoid getting caught up in the fight below. Meanwhile, Zaku sprints between the group of Cloud Ninja. He releases a hail of air bullets in haphazard directions to split them up. Though Omoi and Karui scatter, Atsui tanks the hits, leaving Zaku open for a quick strike. In a flash of steel, Atsui severs 2 of Zaku's fingers. and before he can land another strike, Dosu jumps in. Saving his ally, Dosu simultaneously berates Zaku for trying to go it alone. Choji mutters about the savagery the ninja are employing against one another. Drawing their blades, Karui and Omoi leap into the fray. Lightning sparks around Omoi as he drives his sword into the ground. As his lightning transfers from his blade to forking across the ground, it kicks up a great cloud of dust. Rin emerges first from the cloud, turning and weaving several hand seals. Before her seals finish, a spire of sand drives up from the ground and impales her. A confident Gaara steps out from cover, but Rin's genjutsu reveals that the body he struck was fake. Gaara doesn't even glance around, waiting for the next ninja to expose themselves. Descending from above, Karui drives her sword into his shoulder with her blade. When it strikes him, it glances off his shoulder as if he were wearing invisible armor. Omoi enters between Karui and Gaara, planting a foot on Gaara's chest to push him away. Sand twists around Omoi's foot before he can expel Gaara. Another spear of sand begins forming at their feet, and Omoi manages to pull free right before it strikes. Only his sandal is left behind as they back up to Atsui. Sound Ninja turning around, the Cloud Ninja find themselves surrounded, but Gaara is apparently alone. Dosu feels a queasy feeling in the pit of his stomach when he looks at Gaara. The raw, killing intent coming from the Sand Ninja is suffocating for Dosu. When he saw him during phase 1 of the exams, he definitely did not feel this menace. So he reshifts his focus to the Cloud Ninja exclusively. On the other hand, Omoi is unbothered by Gaara's intensity and decides to take him on while his team faces the sound. Atsui meets Dosu head-on, while Karui fights Zaku and Rin simultaneously. As Team Kurenai watch from overhead, yet another assailant ambushes them from behind. The tree limb they're on is enveloped in a vibrant explosion of electricity. The force of the ninjutsu is so great that it disintegrates the tree limb and all those on it. Below, Sakura and team are hiding in thick bushes, thankful for Shino's foresight. Right after his suggestion, Sakura got right to work in setting up a genjutsu. Just in case they would be found or attacked, they should have an out. Now exposed to the 3 teams below, the mystery assailant falls into the fray. Shino tells them to wait for an opening to escape. Sakura instead claims that they could take advantage of the chaos. They could get major information and, best case scenario, take a scroll. Shino says it would be foolish to join the fatal 4-way. But Sakura insists that they wouldn't have to fight at all if they waited for their most opportune moment. Karui weaves through Rin's genjutsu conjurings and clashes directly with Zaku. Sakura realizes how weak Rin's genjutsu is, and that she hasn't really watched anyone else do genjutsu lately. Overwhelmed with one injured hand, Zaku exerts as much chakra as he can to expel a wall of air. This buffets everyone around him and knocks them backward. As the fighting settles for a moment and everyone recovers, the mysterious assailant sprints through them. Dashing past Gaara, the Cloud Ninja, and straight to Zaku, he strikes perfectly just below the sternum. As Zaku folds in half from both pain and a loss of breath, the ninja turns to avoid the falling Zaku. Producing a long knife from his back, the ninja thrusts down and into Zaku's back. Everyone's silent for a time, realizing that the man had summarily executed Zaku. As if they had awakened from the stupor all at once, they resumed their fighting. Choji stutters fearfully, struggling to keep the volume of his voice down. He whispers that the man who killed Zaku is a stone ninja. He saw his headband tied to his belt. Sakura asks if he's sure, because why would there be a stone ninja here? How could there be? As they watch on, they realize more than ever that the stone ninja definitely is not after the scrolls. He's fighting specifically to kill whoever lets down their guard. When the ninja turns his dominating gaze to Gaara, they both find a ninja that can withstand the other's attacks. This shifts the Cloud Ninja to focusing on the remaining 2 Sound Ninja. Though Gaara tries to grab the man with sand, the Stone Ninja deftly dodges every attempt. Dropping a scroll from his overlong sleeves, Dosu unfurls it with a toss and conjures its sealed jutsu. Deafening roars radiate from the scroll, and as the battlefield cringes from the blast, Dosu lands a perfect strike on Omoi. Rattled by Dosu's vibration strike, Omoi teeters for a moment before collapsing completely, vomiting in attempts to get up. Karui is held up by Rin's genjutsu, leaving Atsui once again alone with Dosu. In a flourish of power, Gaara slices into one of the ancient trees nearby and uses its mighty mass. Attempting to crush everyone present, Gaara pushes the tree towards everyone. Only the hiding leaf ninja are not forced to leap away for safety. The stone ninja easily sidesteps the cumbersome attack and gets in Gaara's face immediately. Growing frustrated, Gaara brandishes his hands to better control his sand. The stone ninja continues to outpace Gaara, getting inside his guard and landing several hard hits. Though Gaara hasn't been injured proper yet, Temari and Kankuro finally expose themselves to protect him. As Temari begins to unfurl her fan, the stone ninja kicks its frame, damaging it and preventing her from opening it fully. He does the same to Kankuro, landing a heavy strike to his still wrapped puppet's head, caving the structure in. As the sand ninja scramble, confused by this extremely capable stone ninja, the cloud upset the balance even more. Rin is finally outmaneuvered and taken out. Only Dosu remains and is clearly weighing his options between fight or flight. Shino pulls out his databook and flips fast through its pages. Sakura tries to get his attention that it's a waste of time, but he extends his book to her and nods at the last remaining ninja. Dosu's information in the book reflects exactly what he's exhibited so far. Muttering, Shino suggests that some of the entries in the book are actually correct. Sakura shakes her head in confusion. She thought the books were simply meant to be misleading, or represent how mission information isn't always accurate. But if some of the information was right, did that mean they need to figure out which information was correct? Shino reflects that the books are still too untrustworthy on a person-to-person basis. It's unreliable to try and pick through the truth. Choji suggests tossing their books then. What a waste of time. Shino tells him no. There's a possibility that the proctor is treating the databook as a fourth scroll. They will finish this competition with everything they started with, just to be safe. As they return their focus to the brawl, a strange darkness descends. This isn't like real darkness, they can still see everything fine. Instead, a sudden dread wafts over them like a draft of cold air. It's clear that everyone feels this as the fighting halts. It's as if the angel of death were upon them. Even Gaara stumbles, as everyone attempts a retreat as if it'll protect them from the weight upon them. Team 9 is just far enough away that they're not so distinctly affected. But the darkness intensifies and the fighters begin to pass out. Sakura shivers. What could it be? She looks to her allies only to see they've passed out as well. Only herself, Gaara, and the stone ninja remain awake as the latter two search around for the conjurer of the trick. Sakura blinks, and suddenly Lord Orochimaru has appeared between Gaara and the stone ninja. In a wicked fast snap, Orochimaru kicks Gaara, who hurls into a tree. Gaara slumps, unconscious. When the stone ninja turns to leave, he runs straight into Jiraiya. Sakura wonders how long Lord Jiraiya was standing there, as if he too had just suddenly appeared. Orochimaru stares the stone ninja down, and before he's able to act, he foams at the mouth and falls over. Jiraiya stops Orochimaru as he attempts to execute the ninja, and insists they can interrogate him for info. Rolling his eyes, Orochimaru tells Jiraiya that they've already had dozens going through interrogations. Jiraiya remarks that clearly this guy was on a special mission. He probably knows more than the rest. Scoffing, Orochimaru insists that none of them ever end up knowing anything. The village hidden in the rocks plays all their stupid plans very close to the chest. Jiraiya reminds him that the interrogation squad are doing the questioning. As such, it shouldn't even be a concern to Orochimaru. Why is he being so resistant on this one point? Orochimaru's mood turns razor sharp and he snaps at Jiraiya. He wonders how one of the Sannin could let such trash into the Chunin exams. He points at Zaku's corpse, where luckily the tree that Gaara fell did not land. Orochimaru tells Jiraiya that it was clearly an assassin's execution. The style of the kill gives itself away. The Chunin exams, therefore, have already been disrupted. And it wasn't a leaf ninja killed, it was some no-name village. If news of this gets out, the leaf could be implicated for being so light on security, especially in the face of war. Jiraiya nods and admits his mistakes, but suggests Orochimaru calm down. Closing until he's just inches from Jiraiya's face, Orochimaru tells him with wicked acidity that security is Jiraiya's sole job. Now, or over the last 30 years, it seems as though he's on cleanup detail after all of Jiraiya's mistakes. Sometimes, Jiraiya needs to get serious. Sakura's frozen in fear of what may happen if she's found out listening in on the argument between two Sannin. No matter how much Jiraiya tries to damage control, Orochimaru just seems to get more angry. Eventually, Orochimaru gets to the point where he shoves Jiraiya. But what happens when a mountain pushes another mountain? Jiraiya keeps his footing and turns silent. Orochimaru tells him that they're ending the war this time, no matter what, before vanishing from Sakura's sight. After several more silent seconds, Jiraiya relaxes and sheathes the kunai he'd brandished under his vest. Shaking his head, Jiraiya too vanishes with the body of the stone ninja. Frozen, Sakura's jaw hangs as she tries to process what she just saw. Snapping back to reality, she shakes her head and runs into the clearing. Quickly getting to work, she searches through the rubble and unconscious ninja. Uncovering an earth scroll, Sakura fist pumps before running back to her team's bush. Ditching stealth, she begins shaking and slapping her team back to consciousness. Somewhere else in the forest, we find Naruto and Tenten walking carefully between a thinner bunch of trees. Hinata went missing without notification or sound, so the remaining two are on guard. A strange mist, almost with a life of its own, snakes through the trees toward Naruto and Tenten. Soon it becomes so thick that Naruto can't see anything. When he turns to Tenten, she's gone. Growling, Naruto chooses a direction at random and just begins sprinting towards it. Tripping over the root of a tree, he stumbles. As he finds his balance and straightens, Zabuza Momochi steps out of the fog. Brandishing his sword before a stunned Naruto, Zabuza swings his mighty blade into the young genin. Teammate is wandering through the forest. It's been a few hours since Phase 2 began, and they've luckily found no one impeding them so quickly. Tenten wants to find cover so they can formulate strategies and unify their goals. Hinata thinks they're not being cautious enough about their surroundings. Naruto just wants to leap into action right away. But seeing how he's outvoted, he decides to let Tenten's plan win. He was stubborn enough to start out, but he's been so antsy to see action that maybe playing it safe will lure enemies in. Once they find a hiding spot in the nook of a tree, they turn to strategizing. First things first, they need to decide who's going to be the permanent holder of their Heaven Scroll. Tenten has great offense, but not a lot of chakra. Hinata has great chakra, but not a lot of defense. But Naruto has phenomenal chakra and a well-balanced defense and offense. He's their safest bet. Tenten personally thinks she could actually beat him in an honest fight. He's pretty tough, but she thinks she might be able to whittle him down. After the scroll's been passed to Naruto, they decide next on how they want to approach an enemy team. Tenten wants to lay traps and wait for a team to come by and spring them, like a Venus flytrap. Hinata points out that the forest is huge. They can't just lay traps in one small area and expect a random team to come along. Naruto thinks they should just choose a direction and just go for it. We could even get a brief inner monologue from Naruto here that he's just not interested in planning. Hinata thinks they should rely on her Byakugan for scouting out threats and even looking for a Hell Scroll. Naruto could do some sensing himself, but seeing how he never practices it, neither of the girls have too much confidence in it. And unlike Hinata's very precise, visually based Byakugan, Naruto's is just a feeling. If you're confused about this, I made the Namikaze clan Sensor Ninja as well, something that Naruto's clearly inherited. But I haven't touched on this since the start of the rewrite, so maybe some have forgotten about it. For so many reasons, they're going with Hinata as the choice Sensor Ninja. Naruto thinks that if they wait too long, all the Hell Scrolls will be snatched up, as if he has any idea what he's talking about. They were given no information on what Hell Scrolls were or how they worked. Tenten also says that there should be more than enough to go around, according to their instructions at the start at least. Naruto warns if any teams should take more than just one. Hinata asks why would this even happen, and Naruto hints at some dark, nefarious purposes. Rolling her eyes at the suggestion, Tenten tells him they may as well be labeled rocks for all the nefarious deeds you could do with those. Nodding, Naruto makes a motion like a club, something you could do with a rock. Sighing now, Tenten thinks they should cautiously search for a Hell Scroll. It would be slow, but then they could at least be on guard for incoming ninja. Hinata agrees, since they have 5 whole days to reach the center tower anyway. They might as well take their time for now. When Naruto can't think of any further reasons to argue, he shrugs and agrees to the plan. Though they didn't discuss their formation, Naruto takes the lead. He volunteers for it, but when Tenten tries to suggest Hinata for the role, he just marches ahead of them anyway. Exhausted already by his childish behavior, Tenten shrugs and just lets him lead. Hinata is in the middle of the group. Here, she can at least be protected and commit her focus to viewing their surroundings. Tenten is in the back because so far she's proven to be the most reliable of the 3. She even jokes that if Naruto was in the back, he'd probably run away without telling them, or he'd get distracted by a weirdly shaped mushroom. Naruto's face scrunches in disappointment as they walk. However, he's too busy acting tough right now to give Tenten reproach. The whole day passes without incident, bad or good. When night falls, Naruto immediately sets to work making a fire. Tenten kicks his setup away and forbids any fire starting. She tells him that night is when things become most dangerous. Before darkness falls, they need to first find the best natural cover possible. If they end up digging holes in the ground, it would stick out like a sore thumb. Naruto tries in this moment to maintain his faux leadership position. He tells the group that they will do as Tenten asks, despite everyone already agreeing to it. He also tells them that he'll keep watch while they sleep. At least that way they'll not be completely defenseless. Tenten agrees that it's a good idea. However, she tells Naruto that they'll take it in shifts. Otherwise, Naruto will be more than exhausted by daybreak. Stubbornly, Naruto promises that he can handle it. There were no fights today, why would he be too tired for such a feat? Most important is that Hinata gets her sleep so she can maximally refresh her eyes. Still, Tenten demands that they take turns. Even if he has a monster inside him, he's not invincible. As the words leave her mouth, Tenten realizes her mistake. She's never called him out for being a Jinchuriki, but she didn't mean anything rude by it. It's the truth. He doesn't have unlimited stamina. To her, as long as he's fighting for the team, it doesn't matter whether he's a Jinchuriki. Nevertheless, it offends Naruto. He tells Tenten that she's free to stay up with him to watch. Regardless, he'll be doing the full night no matter how much she protests. He completely ignores her apology and turns away from her. Tenten doesn't want a schism from within the group, so she lets him be offended and submits to his wishes. She whispers to Hinata that his stubbornness could cause them to drop out of the competition. By the time darkness falls, they've found a natural outcrop of stone to hide under. True to his word, Naruto stays up all night, and luckily no opponents descend upon them. He starts to think they were brought to an unpopulated part of the forest, but there were dozens of teams competing for this phase. Odd to not run into even one. When both girls wake up in the morning, Hinata whispers to Naruto that he needs to be more team-focused. Hinata repeats what Tenten has already said. Her words didn't mean anything. Naruto scoffs bitterly, asking Hinata when it was that she decided to take Tenten's side. Disappointed in his reaction, Hinata opts to not talk to him for a while. Striking out on now day 2 of their test, they mostly follow in the same method they were using on day 1. Tenten tries to tell Naruto that with shorter time comes greater urgency. They need to change up their strategy and quicken their pace. With team communication out the window, Tenten tries to share any updates or ideas she has. Hinata gives her sympathetic shrugs, and Naruto mutely marches ahead. As the tail guard and scout, Tenten turns while walking so she can do a quick scan behind them. After this 2-second check, she turns forward again only for Hinata to be gone. Just gone. Not a sound was made by whatever or whoever plucked her from the spot. Calling to Naruto, Tenten shouts that Hinata's gone. Stubbornness dissolving, Naruto whips around and sees the proof. His eyes widen with surprise. He thought he would have heard her get taken away at the proximity they were to each other. They want to call for her, but they also don't want to give away their position. Tenten tells Naruto they need to search in concentric circles to make sure to not be further than arm's lengths away as well. Naruto tries sensing her presence, but he feels chakra all around him, as if the trees were made of it. Whoever their enemy is, they've spotted and removed the team's better sensor ninja first. They're now searching blind to be outnumbered by an enemy. Tenten and Naruto both notice that the air around feels thick, as if it's actually creating resistance. In certain areas, Tenten is sure that she's walking through invisible water for all its resistance. Naruto thinks that someone might be trying to pull a genjutsu down over their eyes. Tenten doubts it though, since genjutsu usually has an immediate effect. She's also happy that he's dismissed their personal squabble for the now far more important objective. Snaking between some trees ahead, a thick tendril of mist worms toward them. As it reaches them, it circles around until their surroundings are made into a gray opaque. Shaking his head, Naruto becomes annoyed at more mist-like jutsu that reminds him of their first mission. Tenten tries to walk toward Naruto, but he for some reason sprints into the mist and away from her. Alone now, Tenten raises her arms in disbelief. Why would he run away from her? Because Naruto's a total idiot, the team has now been singled out completely. Fingering a scroll, Tenten wonders what she should do in this situation. She is not good at dealing with genjutsu. She might as well be floating through space, as she can't see anything. She can't even hear anything, as if she were in a totally isolated part of the forest. It occurs to her that even Naruto seemed to be sprinting away soundlessly. There were no ground impacts from his feet at all. Suddenly emerging from the mist and in extreme proximity to Tenten, Lady Tsunade appears. Bewildered by the arrival of a Sannin, Tenten asks if she needs anything. Looking down at Tenten with cold eyes, Tsunade asks her why she made the choices she has. Further confused by this question, Tenten tries to insist that it was Naruto that ran away from her. Stepping closer still to Tenten, looming over the young girl, Tsunade hisses in disgust. She points out Tenten's terrible chakra control. If only she had it, she could have learned Tsunade's patented style of taijutsu. But instead, she's just another one of the no-name ninja in the village. She'll grow into a very normal, perhaps even underwhelming, adult ninja. Tenten would be lucky if she even made it to Chunin. Insulted, saddened, and desperate, Tenten asks her idol why she's saying such horrible things. Ignoring her plight, Tsunade steps yet closer and shakes her head dismissively. She tells Tenten that it was a waste of time for her to have become a ninja. She'll never amount to anything. She has no discernible skills. She comes from a useless family. She'll just end up a waste of resources for the village. Breathless and muted, Tenten can only look up at Lady Tsunade in silence. Her strength leaves her, and she crumples to the ground, morale shattered. Naruto turns to Tenten only to notice she's no longer there. Raising his arms in disbelief, Naruto barks some choice words of frustration. He decides that if everyone's going to abandon him, then he might as well just get to the end alone. Allowing his rising anger to control his choices, he sprints off into the mist. Tripping over a root of a tree, he stumbles. Straightening, he beholds Zabuza Momochi emerge from the mist. Frozen in shock at the missing nin, Naruto takes a step back. Catching the same root from before, he trips backward and falls to the ground. Without a single word, Zabuza unsheathes his mighty blade. Naruto feels a familiar fear ensorcel him. Bound by terror, Naruto feels a familiar chill. He hasn't felt this way since the first meeting he had with Zabuza. Like a cramp, his stomach convulses, and he feels a wrenching coming from within. The nine-tailed fox is raging against its reinforced prison. Drawing his blade back, Zabuza swings it. Flinching, Naruto accidentally bangs his head against a rock. This jostles his attention free from the paralyzing fear and gives just enough wherewithal for him to roll away as fast as he can. Trying to find his footing with shaking legs, Naruto stares up at the towering menace. This famous mist ninja even made Asuma Sensei struggle. Every time he stops moving, his fear multiplies. Every time his fear worsens, his stomach wrenches even worse than before. Naruto doesn't even have the strength to stand. The seal on the fox is working in overtime to keep the beast jailed. Zabuza lazily walks toward him, letting his sword drag on the ground. Finally opening his mouth, Zabuza lets out a long, drawn-out, cackling laughter. Even though his shock is worn off, Naruto feels a new rush of horror. The convulsing in his stomach worsens to a point that he's never felt before. If he knew this was the cost of the reinforced seal, he wasn't sure in this moment if he even wanted it. Unable to concentrate, Naruto can only crawl away from Zabuza, doubled over in pain now. Either now or later, Naruto is going to be killed by Zabuza. He wonders why he just keeps resisting. Every time he has these self-defeating thoughts, the beast within him rages even harder. It has built to such an intensity that Naruto can no longer move. His focus has somehow shifted from the immediate threat of Zabuza. Now, the whole of his attention is on the pain he's feeling in his stomach. Looking up one last time, Naruto sees Zabuza's sinister smile under the bandages one last time before blacking out. Awake in his mindscape, Naruto stands in a familiar water that's up to his ankles. In the vast distance, he can see the bars of the Fox's prison. He doesn't want to go over there, but he feels a strange compulsion to. Vaguely looking around, he notices that it's not blackness behind him. Instead, there's a sheet of white, blinding light. Curious, his compulsion fades, and he steps instead into the light. Emerging on the light's other side, Naruto finds himself in a white, blinding canvas in all directions. There's not a single detail in sight, just white. But beside him, another stands. His father Minato crouches beside him, a hand on his shoulder and a warm smile. His shape is vague. Naruto can't even make out his dad's eyes, as if he were behind misted glass. A very quiet voice, with a feminine affect, whispers, "Fight, Naruto." Blinking, Naruto looks up at Zabuza, and a strange assurance falls over him. As his confidence becomes reinforced, Zabuza dissolves and the mist fades. Standing with renewed strength, Naruto furrows his brow in confusion. He looks down and rubs his now painless stomach. Screaming nearby draws his attention. When Tenten stops moving, Hinata looks to her for the reason why. Tenten suddenly shouts to Naruto that Hinata's gone. But Hinata's not gone. She chuckles a little bit and tries to reassure Tenten when Naruto also gasps that she's gone. Maybe they're seeing something she's not. Deactivating her Byakugan for a moment, Hinata beholds a wall of mist around them. They walked into a genjutsu and it was so vague that she didn't even detect it. Upon reactivating the Byakugan, Hinata realizes that there is certainly a faint chakra loitering in the air. When she tries to stop her teammates from moving on, they seem almost unstoppable. Even bear-hugging Tenten barely slows her down. It's as if the genjutsu has been augmented by some sort of ninjutsu. Suddenly, Naruto tries to run off and trips over a tree root. Despite the growing severity of their situation, Hinata finds an odd humor to see people caught in the genjutsu from the outside. Sparing just a moment to smile at the predicament, Hinata spins, disappointed in herself. She stopped paying attention to the surroundings and let a ninja team ambush from behind. With her allies otherwise distracted, she has no choice but to defend them and hope they break free from whatever's holding them. Descending from a hill, Naruto sees three men standing around a person tucked into a ball. As he comes closer, it becomes clear as day. It's Hinata, and she's not in a very good state. Her coat's been torn up, her ninja tools are scattered everywhere. Worst of all, she's lying in blood. Naruto's newfound clarity is keeping him from a reckless fury. Throwing shuriken from afar, Naruto leaps toward their trajectory. The three ninja leap away as shuriken fall where they were standing, and Naruto lands beside Hinata. She's not even conscious. He can feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand as adrenaline begins to pump through him. He's both angry and calm as he stands to face the three ninja on his own. Naruto recognizes them from Phase 1, Sound Ninja. These three are the older set that he had seen. Releasing all three of his scrolls from their pockets, Naruto unfurls them and tosses them to the ground at his feet. Looping his left index finger through a hole of a shuriken, Naruto grips it hard, feeling the pain of its other blades digging into his hand. But if he can't withstand such a minor injury, then he can't face up against three ninja at once. He hoped that his training given by Jiraiya and his father would come in handy here. Shortly before becoming a genin, Jiraiya tried showing him the basics of the Rasengan, but Naruto at the time could not grasp it. All he could remember in the moment was the first stage. Whenever he watched his father perform it, the Rasengan seemed so simple, but even its foundational information was more than confusing for him. Performing a few quick hand seals, Naruto takes a fighting stance and challenges the ninja to come at him. Laughing at the lone kid, all three men charge at him. Naruto finishes his jutsu as the first ninja comes within range. Flourishing his hands in an upward motion, Naruto forms a pool of wind on the ground that juts up like a rocket. Crossing over it, the first ninja is struck hard and hurled more than 20 feet into the air. The other two pause for a moment to watch their ally fly. Stamping on one of the three scrolls, Naruto conjures 3 explosive kunai that he throws at the airborne ninja. Forgetting his ally, Misumi reaches Naruto and locks down his right wrist. Suddenly, his arm unnaturally coils around Naruto's arm. The explosions of the 3 kunai striking the first ninja pull Misumi's eyes away for a second. Ignoring the explosion himself, Naruto with his shuriken hand stabs it into Misumi's coiling arm. Instead of pulling it out for another attempted stab, Naruto just pulls down and tries to make the cut bigger. In too much threat of great injury, Misumi pulls back and retreats slightly. Yoroi grabs Naruto from behind, grappling him into submission. Naruto feels his strength immediately start to wane, and with it, his serene state of mind. As his calm passes, it's replaced by the rage that he was previously lacking. He challenges Yoroi to take as much as he can while Naruto closes his eyes and concentrates as hard as he can. His father told him to use hand seals to make it easier to form the wind, but that still means it's possible to do so without hand seals. Caring not at all about form and all about power, Naruto clenches his teeth and in a roar of anger releases as much wind from his back as he can. This creates an unexpected force that not only detaches Yoroi from Naruto, but launches him several hundred feet into the wilderness. Stamping onto the second scroll, Naruto conjures an opaque packet. Catching it, he tears it open and pulls out a large marble-sized ball before popping it into his mouth. Food pills. It won't do much for Naruto's normally vast chakra pools, but anything extra against the last remaining Misumi is all he needs. His vision doubles and he feels a wave of exhaustion. Blinking fast, Naruto shakes the feeling and keeps his focus on the last injured sound ninja. Misumi has decided now against his weird tricks after watching Yoroi blast off at the speed of sound. Returning to the basics, he believes his best bet is to fight at range. Naruto tries focusing on the palm of his hand. Misumi watches carefully, but nothing happens. Despite flowing his chakra as much as he can into this one point, Naruto has not once taken his eyes off Misumi. It doesn't matter to Naruto who of them or why any of them would decide to pick on one lone ninja, but he would make it so that they wouldn't do that to anyone else in the forest. Dashing at Misumi, Naruto brandishes 3 kunai with paper tags. He throws them individually to the left, right, and above Misumi's head. In these choreographed slow stunts, Naruto has distracted Misumi from flight. Gripping Misumi's collar with his free hand, Naruto almost growls as he pushes his other hand into Misumi. He feels blood drip onto his hand as Misumi wheezes from the strike. He couldn't randomly conjure the Rasengan on demand, so he tried the Windblade Jutsu in a moment of desperation. Lucky for him, it worked at last. Stepping away from a fallen Misumi, Naruto pants and turns back to Hinata exhausted. He sees Yoroi for just an instant before the sound ninja's body collides with his. Raising his arms to guard, Yoroi bowls him over and stabs a kunai into Naruto's right shoulder. Yelping in pain, Naruto tries to push Yoroi off, but the latter is hyper-fixated on keeping the kunai as deep as possible. He mumbles to Naruto how he likes poison before twisting the blade to excruciating pain for Naruto. Drawing on his last remaining chakra and utilizing the only jutsu he knows without his familiar Hiden, Naruto conjures another blast of air in front of him. This time, it's just not enough to push Yoroi off, but it is enough to make him much lighter. Combining his chakra exertion with physical exertion, Naruto barely manages to break free from Yoroi. The poisoned kunai is still in his shoulder, and Naruto pulls it out and uses all his will to climb to his feet. As Yoroi rolls away, Naruto lunges at him with the poisoned kunai. Though Yoroi evades most of the blow, he's still nicked by the blade. This is enough to make him flee immediately, cursing at the cut. Carelessly discarding the poisoned kunai, Naruto forgets everything else. Turning, he stumbles to Hinata's side. Rolling her over, he does a preliminary check for her injuries. She's still very much alive, but she's covered in bruises and cuts, minor and severe. They were torturing her. Checking his pack for bandages, Naruto notices a second scroll. When he pulls it out, he realizes it's a hell scroll. But where did it come from? After doing preliminary first aid on Hinata, Naruto returns to the two fallen sound ninja and searches them for a scroll. Smiling vaguely, Naruto pockets their third and final Earth scroll. Picking up Hinata and carrying her on his back, Naruto departs in search of Tenten. After searching for some 30 minutes, Naruto finally comes across Tenten. She's sitting on the ground, head down, shaking it repeatedly, and chanting, "No, no, no." Jostling her, Naruto falls to one knee and puts a hand on her shoulder. He pushes in a small surge of his chakra to break the genjutsu. With this exertion comes another crippling wave of exhaustion. Naruto realizes that he really needs to stop using his chakra altogether. Snapping back to reality, Tenten looks up at him with sunken eyes. She apologizes with a dead tone. Naruto dismisses it, claiming all responsibility for being an idiot. She shakes her head some more, says no one last time, and then falls face first into the mud. If he saw Zabuza, he wonders what she could have experienced. And she doesn't have a monster inside her. Awkwardly, Naruto lifts both girls onto his back. Exhausted, sleep-deprived, chakra run out, injured, and poisoned, Naruto walks further into the woods, with both girls on his back.
Kiba, Ino, and Lee are casually making their way toward the tower, having no way of otherwise finding a hell scroll. They were told there'd be more than enough, but with absolutely no help in finding them, the team just can't figure out how to proceed. With Kiba's sensory abilities, they've been smartly avoiding conflict, passing nearby teams unnoticed. But on the single occasion where they did take a hell scroll from a team that had lost their original scroll already, their opponent set fire to the scroll and burned it up. Besides this one speed bump, they're all in good shape and making good time. In their travels, they also came across a defeated group with their heaven scroll sitting free from anyone's pack. There were no traps or challenges around the scroll, so the team took it as an additional bargaining chip if they came across a team too strong. From the exam's beginning, they would travel for nearly 2 days unperturbed, until Kiba at last smells something nearby. When Ino asks what it is, he says that it smells like blood. Lee wonders if they've wandered close to another finished fight. Kiba shakes his head and says it smells like blood, not that it is blood. Confused, Ino tells him to clarify, and Kiba tells them that the Uchihas smell like blood, but he's not smelling their blood, specifically. Eyes lighting up that Sasuke could be nearby, Ino directs Kiba to show them where the scent's from. Lee stops them both and says they shouldn't approach every single scene of carnage, just in case it is a trap. Ino agrees after a moment and changes her orders to Kiba to not hurt Sasuke when he goes over there. Don't even try to. Staring blankly at Ino, Kiba asks her what he's supposed to do if people attack him. She tells him he can defend himself, but because of the mystery of the situation and that Sasuke might be over there, he can't be the attacker. He must be passive-defensive. Grudgingly agreeing, Kiba tells them to stay down as he dashes into the brush. He's only in the thick bushes for 20 minutes before emerging on its other side to an extinguished campfire. Around the smoking campsite are who he expected, Sasuke, Neji, and Shikamaru. Around them are 3 other defeated Leaf Shinobi that he's unfamiliar with. With the extra Heaven Scroll in his pack, Kiba raises his hands with a smirk. He tells them that he's just investigating who was nearby, but since they're both from the same class, they can just part ways and never speak of this again. As he tries to take a step back, Sasuke dashes around his flank to cut off his escape. None of Team 7 speak to him as they slowly move to surround him. He tells them that they can beat him up if they want to, or they can have the Heaven Scroll that he has in his pack. He wonders why he blindly dashed into the opening. Why didn't he stop? Carefully pulling out the Heaven Scroll and presenting it to them, Kiba's eye begins to twitch. He's irritated by the submissive form he's taking. Throwing it to Sasuke, who sidesteps and lets it fall to the ground, Kiba instantly shifts from playing nice to suspicious. If they're not flanking him for the scroll, why else are they trying to take him out? He tries telling them that he has nothing else. He doesn't have food on him, or water, or any kind of scroll past the one he just tossed. From his peripheral vision, Kiba sees one of Shikamaru's shadowy tendrils snaking toward him. Hopping over it, he intends to land on Sasuke's other side, but Sasuke intercepts him in midair. Caught off guard, he still manages to trade a couple strikes before landing back down. Shikamaru's shadow is almost upon him, and he's forced to take several evasive steps whilst also defending against Sasuke. As he makes one successful strike, Neji hits him in the side and knocks the wind out of him. Spluttering and wheezing, he loses track for just a second, and Shikamaru's shadow catches him. As he looks up at his three opponents, Sasuke performs a fireball jutsu. The fire overtakes him, and he's suddenly standing unharmed beside Ino and Lee. Ino's looking at him like he's gone deaf and asks whether he's going to scout the team he just smelled out. While he tries to comprehend what just happened, his short-term memory quickly fades away. Renewed clarity from Ino's berating, Kiba charges into the woods to scout the team. Emerging on the bush's other side, he beholds Team 7 at a campfire, standing over a freshly beaten team. Something about the situation feels familiar, but Kiba needs to focus on the now. Ino made him promise to not do anything aggressive, so he tries to offer up his Heaven Scroll. Team 7 is unamused and attacks him anyway. Eventually overwhelmed, Kiba's taken out by a fireball and simultaneously finds himself standing beside Ino and Lee. Ino's looking at him as if he's an idiot, and asks him if he's going to scout that team in the bushes. "Ah, yeah, that team he just smelled like blood, that's right. It might be their fellow classmates, he shouldn't take an aggressive approach." "Oh, it is Sasuke. They don't want the Heaven Scroll? They're all attacking at the same time?" Overwhelmed, Kiba flinches and finds Ino staring at him in disbelief that he won't go scout this team out. His deja vu doesn't fade so fast, and he tells her that he just did that. It didn't work out so well. Confused, Ino tells him that he just told them that he smelled them. She tells him to stop being a fool and go scout. Sneaking into the bushes, Kiba feels this heavy familiarity, as if he's passed through this stretch of bushes dozens of times. He hears a fire nearby and sneaks to the edge of the bushes to peer unseen. Perhaps 6 feet in front of him, Sasuke is standing with his back turned. His other teammates are more than 30 feet away, talking beside a fire. A reminder passes through his head to not take offensive action, but he doesn't recall who told him that. Forgetting the advice, he bursts from the bushes with fangs bared and lands a lethal surprise strike on Sasuke. Blinking, Kiba finds himself looking up at Ino and Lee. They tell him that he just suddenly passed out, and when he asked for how long, just about 3 hours. He definitely feels mentally exhausted, but remembers more clearly than ever now the repeated exercise he was put through. He wonders if there was a moral lesson from that challenge, or if it was simply a puzzle to figure out. Or perhaps it was all simply in his head and somehow the forest had gotten to him. But before that, he's laying on lumpy ground with one particular rock sticking right in his back. Grumbling, Kiba shifts and pulls the rock out from under him. Except it's not a rock, it's a Hell Scroll. It's dawn now on the third day as someone stumbles out of the woods at the base of the tower. They're struggling slowly toward the nearest door they can see. As we come in close, it becomes clearly Naruto. Collapsing just feet from the door, he passes out and releases the two girls on his back. As they fall free, they're jostled awake. Tenten is only plagued in her mind as she sits up and mutely looks down at Naruto. Hinata, on the other hand, has realized how far he's come with them on his back, but she's too injured still to pull him to the tower door. She calls for Tenten, barely with the strength to stay conscious, and pleads for help. Lazily, Tenten walks to Hinata and grabs one of Naruto's hands to drag him to the door. The door clicks as they touch it and swings open. Barely making it inside, all three collapse. The 3 scrolls in Naruto's pack begin vibrating before bursting in a big cloud of smoke. Standing before them is... It's noon, now on the 5th and final day. Team 7 are still hunting for their Heaven Scroll. They're all exhausted, having been through over a dozen fights with other teams already. They're lucky to have gotten even a couple hours shut-eye each night without being jumped by another team. Constantly on alert and constantly failing to get their 3rd scroll, time has run out. They've decided to camp at the tower's edge and just peck off whatever teams are nearby. They're all sporting injuries, and not since Phase 2's beginning has any one of their chakra pools been fully replenished. They're constantly fighting on half a tank. Intercepting a group of leaf ninja, they're so tired of this phase that there's no talk or banter. Sasuke and Neji are both on the instant defensive and weave between their also tired foes in as short a time as possible. A few chakra points deactivated on each ninja cripples them enough that even Shikamaru's subpar taijutsu can easily outmaneuver them. A gong suddenly sounds from the tower as Anko's voice announces there's just 30 minutes left on the phase. Both teams turn as vicious as possible toward one another. Sasuke pegs one ninja against a tree and searches his pack for scrolls instead of knocking him out. Though the ninja pushes him away, he manages to grab one scroll, a Hell Scroll. He looks at the scroll with disappointment, and as he's about to toss it away, it goes up in flames. Once a Hell Scroll is claimed by a team, it will burn up in anyone else's hands. That's why there's more Hell Scrolls than there are teams. Sakura, Choji, and Shino are jumping from tree to tree. It's the very last day and they still haven't found a Hell Scroll. They've decided to ditch caution for their urgency. Before they know it, they've reached the tower. Deciding to expand from that point, they begin a desperate search. But finally, Shino finds one resting at the base of a tree, seemingly untouched. Around this Hell Scroll, about 10 feet apart from one another, are 3 kunai stuck into the tree. Sakura reminds the other two that Hell Scrolls are probably called such for some sort of trick. Choji agrees and asks how they should approach it. Shino does a quick check with his bugs to make sure there aren't any traps, and there don't appear to be any. Sakura then says the best way to test the waters is to simply wade in. Volunteering for the task, she carefully walks toward the scroll. Billowing around her, a sudden genjutsu like a flower closing into a bulb envelops Sakura. Sakura feels odd. Though she can visually tell what's happening to her, she just instinctively knows that she's in a genjutsu. She hasn't been tricked. When Neji Hyuga appears before her with his all-seeing Byakugan, Sakura notes how poor the details are. The wrappings he usually has on his right arm and leg are oddly on his left. If this genjutsu were taking advantage of her memory, then it was doing a poor job. She doesn't even know Neji that well, but still remembers such a detail. Wondering how she can disrupt the genjutsu, Sakura forms several hand seals while humming dulcet tones. Finishing her own genjutsu, Sakura claps her hands loudly together. Not only does her genjutsu hide her presence, augmented both visually and aurally, but it also spikes out offensively with her clap. Like poking holes in a parachute, her genjutsu pierces the foreign genjutsu and it begins to deflate and fall apart. As the genjutsu disarms, Sakura releases her own and runs to the Hell Scroll before cheering to the other two in celebration. Luckily for them, their resident genjutsu expert took the challenge and crushed it. However, the Hell Scroll has a barrier around it. They surmise that all 3 kunai need to be removed at once, so Sakura invites them over. Shino tells Choji to wait just in case the genjutsu pops out again. It might be layered like a trap, but subtle enough to not be detected as such. Sure enough, as Shino approaches Sakura, a genjutsu floats down over him and cuts him off from his allies. This time, Rock Lee appears before him. Shino is totally tricked by the genjutsu, despite expecting it, and conjures his bees in anticipation for trying out their utility. Sakura tries calling to him that it's fake, but he can't hear her. Lee outstrips Shino's bugs for speed easily, and though his punches aren't leaving any real impact, Shino's increasingly convinced that he's being pulverized. At first, he seeks to tuck into a ball and become defensive. For someone as talented as Lee, Shino realizes that he should have been beaten to a pulp by now. Closing off Lee from his senses, Shino reaches out to his sensor bugs and notices the veil of chakra pulled down around him. Right, a genjutsu. How could he even forget that? Remembering where he is, Shino straightens, looks through the elusive Lee, and at Sakura. His bugs purge the genjutsu from his system and dispels around him as he walks toward her, like cool guys walking away from explosions. He shakes his head and tells Sakura that her genjutsu is even better than whatever the Hell Scroll is doing to them. Grinning proudly at him, she reassures Shino that if he sticks by her side for long enough, he'll soon learn to not be tricked by genjutsu at all. Recognizing the inevitable, they call to Choji that he'll have to endure some sort of illusion to get to them. The moment Choji emerges from the bushes, he stops and like a wall, the genjutsu appears all around him, boxing him in. Surrounded quickly, Choji watches as strangers, friends, and even family all fall in front of him. He buckles at the knees, and tears begin to stream down his face. Sakura and Shino try to cheer him on, but Choji can't hear anything beyond the terror around him. Nearby, they hear Anko's voice from the tower announcing just 30 minutes left on the competition. Shino tries to step towards Choji to help him out of the illusion, but Sakura stops him. She tells him that the next time the three of them are in battle, Choji needs to be reliable. And he'll never be reliable for as long as he allows this fear to haunt him. It's cruel now, and maybe they're monsters for just watching, but he needs to get past this. They're ninja. Death is not a concept that should be alien to them. Shino shakes his head and tells her no. You can't give everyone the same cold treatment and expect equal results. Choji doesn't need courage. He needs hope, and they need to give that to him. From their outside vantage point, they can see what's happening, but they can't hear what Choji hears. Crying, screaming, bloodletting carnage. Closing his eyes isn't doing anything, as Choji can't unsee any of it. As the bodies pile up around him, he starts hearing familiar voices. His father, Choza, crying out for his help. His childhood friend, Shikamaru, shouting for him. His teammate, Shino, gasping for aid. Teeth chattering, Choji tries to call for courage, but reaches only an empty void. Terrified at finding nothing, Choji retreats back to his fear. Soon, Ino and Sakura are amongst the fallen, also crying out for his help. The longer he waits in his fear, the worse it gets. Trying again, Choji reaches inward for the courage that he needs, and yet again, there's an absence on the other side. As fear is replaced with panicked desperation, a hand juts in from nowhere, belonging to nobody. Shino's face appears from nothingness and he tells Choji, "We're here for you, buddy. Grab my hand." All other resources spent, Choji reaches for Shino's hand, and the illusion around them dissipates. "Forget courage," Shino tells him, as Sakura dispels the genjutsu completely. "But keep your hope. Fight with that instead. With courage, you fight alone. With hope, we fight together. And it's a collective fight, not a solo one. No matter where you end up, I will always be trying to help." "We will," Sakura adds, giving Choji a confident smile. Pulling the three kunai out at once releases the barrier, and all three turn to the tower as the final minutes tick away. Choji smiles for their aid, reassured that even in the darkest hour they'll always be trying to help. But he still wonders what would have happened had he reached into the void and decided to just stay there.
Near the very end of the time limit, we see Sakura, Shino, and Choji entering the tower. It's Kurenai-sensei who pops out of their scrolls. She greets them with a congratulatory smile, sure that their journey to get here was probably pretty rough. What's most important though is that they made it. She tells them the competition isn't over yet though, so they can't yet relax. Guiding them from the entrance room, Kurenai leads them to the main hall where the team finds everyone else waiting. Sitting against a wall far opposite the doors are the Sand Ninja. Temari and Kankuro are no worse for wear, but Gaara's clutching at his head with both hands. Though the Sand siblings are trying to keep him calm, it doesn't appear to be working. Nearer, the Cloud Ninja are pacing along a wall, glancing up only to see which team made it this time. And when I say along a wall, I mean they're literally just standing on the wall and walking back and forth. I think that's a funny image. Nearest the entrance is the Sound team, who are filing out of the room as Team Kurenai enter. The Sound teams were devastated. To keep teams of 3, Dosu wanted to bring Yoroi into his group with Keen. However, whoever pulls the strings for the Sound teams decided they did such a poor job of it that all the Genin are being pulled from consideration, forcing a forfeit. Dosu is the only one who fights against this ruling. He thinks it puts Zaku's name to shame by pulling out now, not to mention making the Sound look weaker still. But his feelings are ultimately trumped by whomever is pulling their strings. Past these foreign teams, it's a relief that everyone of the Konoha 12 made it this far. Well, all except one team. At the main doors to the tower, Anko is having an argument. Standing before her with scrolls in hand, clothes muddied and bloodied, panting hoarsely, Team 7 wait for her deliberation. As she counted down to 0 and turned the key to lock the doors, Team 7 burst through them. While she was trying to kick them out, the scrolls activated and Kakashi burst out. Kakashi first tries to reason with her that he wouldn't have been summoned if they didn't make it in time. But Anko flatly refutes this by saying the key was churning, it's over. He tries to appeal to her own sense of determination by showing how committed his team was to getting through that door before time officially ran out. Anko tells Kakashi that she's the proctor, not him, so she decides who passes and who fails. But Kakashi argues that the potential of his team is too great to make them fail now. He'd understand if they were a few seconds late or longer and wouldn't fight for them to unjustly get a bye. However, what Anko's denying is the difference of a couple milliseconds. Meanwhile, in the main hall, Choji, Sakura, and Shino meet up with their fellow classmates. Ino cheers for Choji and Sakura making it through, even if it was last minute. As they join with their fellow ninja, they overhear an ongoing list of increasing challenges between Naruto and Kiba. Kiba's confidence has reached new levels as he berates Naruto for letting his team get so beat up. Naruto, meanwhile, is challenging him to go through what he went through, being outnumbered. Kiba claims he can take 3 people on at the same time, while Naruto goes on to further claim he probably could have taken on 4. This number just increases between the two until Ino punches Kiba in the head and asks him if he's trying to out-dumb Naruto. Since Naruto's team got to the tower a couple of days ahead of time, Asuma was able to come out of the scroll and assess their situation. Due to Naruto's fox-empowered healing factor, all he needed was some rest. Hinata's wounds needed proper first aid, but considering they were still technically in the competition, Asuma had to rouse Tenten to the task. Speaking of which, Tenten's mostly recovered now. She's compartmentalized her issues so that she can focus on the task at hand. She'll face her demons later when their success isn't being challenged. Rock Lee, meanwhile, is bursting at the seams with shame. Despite Might Guy's urges for him to calm down, Rock Lee is infuriated that he missed out on everything in the Forest of Death. No matter who his opponent shall be in the future, he will win so that he can go on to impress everyone. Whoever gets in his way will have his ire no matter what. He'll eke out a victory. While they have the time, they start sharing stories about what each had to go through. The unanimous point of discussion here is the Hell Scrolls, as most of the kids still don't entirely understand what they are. Equally, no one really wants to talk about their personal experiences with the Hell Scrolls. The Sand siblings try to listen in to the conversation and especially perk up when Hell Scrolls are mentioned, but unfortunately no one knows enough about them. Baki is still the teacher for the Sand siblings and doesn't seem to care a whit that Gaara is in pain. Samui stands with the Cloud Ninja as their teacher, though it's fair to say that no one of the Leaf Genin knows who she is yet. Kakashi gets annoyed that Anko is so unflinching in her decision to bar Team 7 from proceeding. Anko, on the other hand, insists that regardless of who it is, she'd make the same decision for any team. Unable to come to an agreement, they call on the Hokage, who is of course present as one of those to give congratulations. Kakashi tells him that it's absurd to lock out his team based on a technicality of how long she decided to take to say 0. Anko tries to use this against him, pointing out that she didn't even have to say 0. Time was up by that point. Minato nods at them and looks at Team 7. They're banged up and exhausted, but no less present than any of the teams in the other room. After some quiet deliberation, Minato asks the team themselves if they had to fight for their lives right now in order to proceed. Would they be up for the challenge? They agree instantly, complaining that they wouldn't have gone through 5 days of that nonsense just to give up now. It's a ridiculous premise. Who agrees to that? Minato doesn't want to waste further time, and despite Anko's complaints that too many teams have succeeded as it is, decides to allow Team 7 through. Finally joining the others in the main hall, Team 7 doesn't get to mingle with the others as Anko and Minato take center stage. Several of the Jonin present are clearly annoyed that yet another Leaf team was given a pass to this part of the exam. Samui is indifferent, Baki's irritated, and even Kurenai's rolling her eyes, convinced that if it weren't Team 7, they wouldn't have been granted the pass. To start out, Anko gives a rather elaborate speech. She tells them the role of the scrolls, heaven and earth. This is similar as in canon, how sometimes you're given an objective and you're entrusted with the secrecy of that mission. It's equally important to not peek into the scrolls' content as well as to deliver them safely. Different teams competing for these scrolls is a good simulation of being in the field and having the enemy directly attempting to subvert your mission. The Hell Scrolls are a different touch. Hell Scrolls were initially designed by the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, as a sort of trap for enemies trying to rifle through their opponent's tools and weapons. It was meant originally as a delay tactic as well as for setting up ambushes. With the help of Kurenai, these scrolls were given a more sinister twist for the Chunin exams. The scrolls were designed specifically to show someone their worst fears or expose a weakness of theirs. They were meant for the Genin to grow beyond themselves, beyond their great fears. Everyone who was exposed to a Hell Scroll was a better person for it, as they saw some form of weakness in themselves. The secondary aspect of the Hell Scrolls were to provide great punishment for failing to hold on to one. Sometimes failure in a mission is irreversible. Anko cites the Kanabi Bridge mission, a mission whose failure may have meant a loss for the Leaf versus the Rock. Had they failed to destroy the bridge, the Rock would have never lost their foothold, and the war likely would have ended in a loss for the Leaf by now. The Hell Scrolls were meant to represent how disastrously consequential life could become by burning up if handled by an opponent team. Sasuke thinks to himself in this moment, the person he fought wasn't Akane, but an illusion? And with that, Anko points out several records that were broken during these Chunin exams. The Sand team made it to the tower in record time, 18 hours into the first day. This of course earns a lot of hushed whispers about the Sand siblings. The Cloud team burned through 11 Hell Scrolls before successfully retaining one. Though Anko doesn't go into detail about how the Cloud team managed that, all the Genin look at them in wonder. Finally, Team 7 defeated the most amount of teams before making it to the tower, coming in at 19 defeated teams. Again, the hushed whispering returns as everyone stares at the clearly most exhausted team there. Anko says that nearly 100 individual ninja entered the forest 5 days ago, and now they're down to 18 ninja. Before she continues, Minato clears his throat, and she defers to him. Minato tells the Genin that he doesn't want to take up too much of their time, but it's important to realize what's to come in the Chunin exams. For the last 5 days, they've been in a heated contest with each other to grasp absolute victory. However, for the future of their villages, the Leaf has allied itself with both the Cloud and the Sand. Their opponents of today are their allies of tomorrow, unified against one common enemy. The reason why these Chunin exams are held with ninja from other villages is to remind each other of what the other's capable. It's a deterrent for continued war. We like to play our cards close to the chest, but while other nations know even a little bit of what we can do, it can encourage cooperation and deter conflict. And these war games that we call Chunin exams serve a secondary purpose. Genin are meant to be unlearned, unpolished, and require in some cases the strictest of guidance to succeed. Chunin are meant to be learning but polished, and require in most cases little to no supervision to succeed. They are the next step in the journey to Jonin level, where one can become entirely independent and reliable completely. In war, the less you have to watch your Genin learners, the less likely you are to fall to an ambush. Chunin are even capable of leading other Genin into battle, and at the crux of every major nation in the world, Chunin comprise of the vast majority of a ninja force. They either don't live long enough to reach Jonin, or they simply lack the skills. But at the end of the day, it's a speed bump that all must go through on their quest for greater skill and power. He reminds them all that while they're at the base level now, it only takes doing well in a couple exams for them to reach the highest levels. To become a Jonin is a different and difficult challenge in each village, but at the end of the day, why are they in this room if not to reach for the top? He clears his throat again before nodding for Anko to continue. Anko tells the Genin that there are too many of them. Due to the function and scale of Phase 3, the Force of Death is designed to keep too many from passing. It's unorthodox, but now they have to thin the numbers of successful Genin. In order to do this, they are going to reduce numbers by half, with small, successive battles between individual ninja. She understands that some of the ninja present are extremely tired and may not be up for more fighting. However, life sometimes sucks before it gets better. They will draw names at complete random, and the Genin will fight until 9 are left. The black screen above Anko begins flitting through all the Genin's names as everyone impatiently waits for who's to fight whom. As it stops at 2 names, Anko directs the remaining Genin to the above balconies so they may watch the ensuing fight. And that about does it for today's episode. This'll be it until the new year, so let's all take it easy and get back at it. Huh? Oh, the names? Right. I guess I could tell you that. The first two to fight are Sakura Haruno and Shikamaru Nara. They're the only two left on the floor, with Anko standing nearby as the match referee. Standing beneath the hand seal statue are four: Minato, Raido, Darui, and Baki. He could duck out, but Darui was dying of boredom and wanted to watch the fights, even if they would be lesser to the Phase 3 fights. He's of course a Jonin at this point in the story, still a right hand to the Raikage. Baki also serves as the Sand representative in addition to teacher of the Sand siblings. Baki's more interested in the offhand comments of the higher ninja than he is in his students' comments about the fights and prospective opponents. Raido is a stand-in in case Minato has to leave for any reason. He'd help direct the village visitors and any other smaller tasks should they need aid. Like a butler. Standing not 30 feet or 10 meters apart, Sakura and Shikamaru make minor adjustments to their form while waiting for the match to begin. Shikamaru's totally wiped from 5 long days of turmoil. He knows Sakura doesn't have a very large chakra pool herself, but his own is nearly exhausted. Shikamaru only has a few jutsu in him before his metaphorical tank runs out. Despite the continued shuffling around them, both are staring at each other mutely. Anko explains the rules to them, though she's just an indiscernible echo to them as they wait eagerly for the match to begin. As Anko sounds off for the match's beginning, Shikamaru waits for Sakura to make the first move. She forms several hand seals very quickly, but seems to release concentration before completing the jutsu. Hands hanging indecisively for one long moment, she reaches instead into her toolkit and Shikamaru matches her. Pulling out a shuriken, he throws it left of center in a bid for her to dive right and prepares a kunai next. Sakura meets his expectations and chooses to dodge right into the kunai that he had pulled out and thrown quickly after. Sakura then decides to leap into the air to dodge the second projectile. Gambling on his chakra reserves, Shikamaru snakes out a thin tendril of smoke to lie in wait for Sakura's landing. More than nearly anyone present, Shikamaru wants to end this match as quickly as possible. Not because he's impatient, and not even because he's lazy, but because he's just so incredibly tired. Sakura lands back down, predictably and helplessly, into his shadow tendril. They stand now, locked in motion with each other for a few seconds, before Shikamaru relaxes and straightens, forcing Sakura to as well. As she's forced to mirror him, he centers them in the arena and turns in just such a way that he can guide her to a wall. And making sure that he's also not in any obstacle's way, he crashes his head forward. Sakura's headband clunks loudly against the wall and she slumps. Relinquishing the shadow possession, Shikamaru groans that it's finally all over. He can find some corner to sleep in. He also apologizes to the unconscious Sakura for the struggles of the last 5 days becoming meaningless, but one of them had to move on at the end of the day. Yawning, he looks over at Anko, who is staring blankly at him. Obviously, this strikes him as strange, so he glances back at Sakura's crumpled body, and it vibrates. Sure, it's his exhaustion. Shikamaru rubs his eyes and leans in for a closer look, only for her body to evaporate. It turns into a Sakura-shaped cloud of reddish pink before disappearing altogether. As he curses and his 200 IQ mind goes over any of the moments she could have formed the genjutsu, Sakura appears behind him. Landing an unguarded kick to his side, Sakura sends Shikamaru reeling. Off balance, Shikamaru gasps for the wind that was just taken from him. Spinning around, he throws a shuriken at Sakura, but it passes right through her visage. He considers giving up in this moment. Had he come across Sakura out in the forest, would she still have outmaneuvered him like this? Was it just because he was tired? He figures she hadn't actually released the jutsu she had begun to form, and instead finished it perhaps before leaping into the air. However she did it, it was smooth. It wasn't very long ago that they were in academy together, and she didn't seem to have any specialization for genjutsu while there.
He groans again, this time from confusion and wanting to give up. However, he hears encouragement from up above, Sasuke's voice. Pulling out a scroll, Shikamaru unfurls it and jumps away from her illusion. His father has taught him several more complex shadow jutsu that he can't reliably use in combat due to chakra constraints. But to keep them in a scroll and use them when he has no chakra to spare is the definition of efficient for Shikamaru. Placing a hand on the unfurled scroll, Shikamaru's scroll creates 8 thick tendrils of shadow that reach out and lash like whips in random directions. His father calls it shadow-style all-reaching jutsu, but Shikamaru didn't like the boring, dated name, so he's renamed it to shadow-style Shadow Kraken Jutsu. I considered calling it Release the Kraken, but that's just cheesy. He can't control her if she's caught by these tentacles, but he can tie her down with them. As he expects, the tendrils go through all the illusions of Sakura, and he begins looking around for where the real one could be. An explosive shuriken falls from the ceiling and explodes in midair, evaporating his shadowy tendrils, but possibly revealing her location. Keeping his cool, Shikamaru distances himself from the explosion and hides in the shadow of one of the balconies against a wall. It both narrows his escape routes and strengthens his now extremely weak shadow possession. Choji looks down at the fight, unsure who to cheer for. Shikamaru is his childhood friend, nay, his best friend. But the mere fact of them being on different teams, even if for the same village, makes them enemies. If Shikamaru wins the fight and Choji wins his own, that would leave the chance open that he could fight Shikamaru later. Conversely, he doesn't want Sakura, his teammate, to lose either. She's helping him round out his skills, and the rate at which she's learning genjutsu is startling, to say the least. It would almost be a shame if her progress was stymied here. Shikamaru glances at the ceiling overhead. If Sakura wasn't on the ground to be caught, she must be overhead. She wouldn't be amongst the other contestants, or surely Anko would call her out for hiding amongst what were effectively civilians in this case. Followed by a short shout and landing on the floor, 3 more genjutsus of Sakura take up arms. They appeared from nothingness, conjured from thin air, suggesting to Shikamaru that she had somehow created her genjutsu at a distance. Surely she wasn't so skilled with genjutsu to do so. But then again, the raised eyebrow from Hinata and the mouth agape from Anko was all Shikamaru needed for reaction from more learned eyes. Whatever Sakura was doing here was impressive to some already impressive people. The genjutsus of herself space themselves equidistantly apart and mirror each other's actions exactly, replicating some sort of kaleidoscope effect as they charge at Shikamaru. Shikamaru's already solved this problem though. The real one is not among them. Afraid of raining shuriken, Shikamaru backs to the wall again. Trying to figure out a method of exposing her, Shikamaru suddenly hears a quiet "Hi" from above. As he turns to see Sakura kneeling 6 feet up on the wall, she also leaps into him and knees him in the face. He tries to pull his hands together for a last-ditch shadow possession, but Sakura catches his hands and keeps them apart. She's panting now, but Shikamaru's totally exhausted, and now dizzied by the knee to his head. They struggle for a time, hands locked in a fight to overpower each other, until Shikamaru suddenly just stops resisting. She releases him as he slumps to the ground and gives up. Finished proper, Sakura celebrates her victory with characters like Ino, Choji, and even Naruto cheering at the impressive show. Simultaneously, Ino and Choji offer Shikamaru their condolences, and he waves a hand at them and says it's fine as he rolls up and pretends to be asleep. Anko tells them that there's no time for joking around like this. They need to clear the field and let the next combatants be chosen. Sakura offers a hand to Shikamaru and helps him to his feet. She tells him it was a good match and he just makes affirming noises back. Kakashi calls down to Shikamaru as he staggers with Sakura towards the stairs. He asks him if he wants medical aid. Shikamaru gives more noises. These ones sound a little bit more negative. Maybe he doesn't need medical aid then. Anyhow, Sakura gets back to her team and Kurenai places a hand on her back and gives her a great smile. Meanwhile, Shikamaru finally reaches Team 7, and Sasuke smirks at him, telling him they're all tired. This kind of thing might happen. Neji snorts with smug ridicule for his teammates. They have no room to be weak. They're the best of their class, chosen by the Hokage himself. The black screen begins flitting through names again. Gaara looks at the black screen through one eye, still struggling with his headache. Omoi is playing with a toothpick, flipping it between his fingers while he sits against the wall carelessly. Naruto is gripping the rail of the balcony hard as he stares intently at the changing names. Rock Lee is practically snarling, more amped for action than at any point in living memory. Temari versus Neji Hyuga. Laughing behind closed lips, Neji tells any who can hear him to hold their applause until after the match, even though the victor is certain. Temari, meanwhile, is kind of annoyed. Her team arrived at the tower early, which presented a great opportunity to fix their tools. Though Kankuro simply traded one broken puppet out for another, Temari only has one fan, and she didn't have the tools available to repair the damages. Though she's fighting from full strength, her primary weapon will heavily cripple her chances if she's not careful. On the flip side, everyone in the room can tell that Neji's just done. Like, yeah, how is he still on his feet? And in spite of his exhaustion, Neji's pride takes center stage to face Temari of the Land of Wind. His vision shifts between blurry and clear, but he will not wipe his eyes and betray even a moment's weakness. He's already overused his Byakugan and can't risk its backlash for this fight. Neji decides to fight without the Byakugan, which ultimately means that he's a fatigued, close-range fighter against a fresh, long-range fighter. He knows if he can close the distance, it'll be an automatic win for him. However, Temari has her great fan, and its existence is a huge deterrent to his success. Smashing her fan against a nearby pillar is the only way for Temari to get it open, and it only goes open to the first dot. Growling, Temari winds back and swings it at Neji, who takes it full on to gauge its power. Its wind cuts into his clothes and leaves shallow wounds on his skin. Squinting against the wind, Neji raises his palms for defense and charges Temari. Leaping backward to maintain her distance, Temari winds up for another blast and hits Neji again. Again, he winces and raises his hands to protect his face. His clothes shred with this blast, and the damage to his arms become pronounced. Running out of room to retreat to, Temari lodges a foot against the frame of her fan, and only with all of her might is she able to pull it open to the second dot. This undue stress, however, frees the fan along its frame. Blasting once more, Temari studies whether Neji will cut off and escape. Neji tucks down, forming bloody seals with his cut-up hands to raise an earthen wall that eats the wind blast for him. But the wall is weak and crumbles away from Temari's blast. Only a small pile of it remains after the wind is past. Temari taunts him to stay put if he has any guts as she resumes trying to force her fan open. Pulling a scroll from his jacket, Neji unfurls it but keeps the scroll bunched up. Neji makes sure she's not moving before lobbing his scroll overhead, passing his chakra into it to force its activation. Out from the scroll, a great fireball blasts downward at Temari. She wasn't expecting a fireball from the scroll and reflexively bats at it with her fan, but all that does is embolden the fireball. Furiously, Temari finally manages to open her fan all the way, and the effort tears it. Nonetheless, she's now able to conjure enough force to redirect the fireball. It's further augmented, but its trajectory is finally towards the ceiling instead of the floor. In her moments of desperation to keep his instant fireball at bay, Temari was distracted and lost track of Neji. Sneaking up on her blind spot, Neji finds incredible difficulty in forming his chakra for gentle palm. Landing a clean strike to her shoulder, Neji fails to maintain focus for more strikes. But the damage is done. Temari recoils as her dominant right arm is disabled. Her fan clatters to the ground as she's unable to wield it with just one arm. Even as a club, it's a useless tool now. The fireball crashes into the ceiling above, raining bits of debris and dust down upon them. Temari shields herself with one arm from the falling pieces, but Neji leaves himself unguarded. If he's to win this, he needs to go all in on offense. Coughing and panting, Neji maintains his right posture and holds out his cut-up arm, inviting her to further combat. Blood drips from his every limb, cut up from Temari's previous attacks. His eyes are now half shut, as he barely has the energy to move forward. He's fought valiantly through all their challenges of the last 5 days. But unlike Shikamaru, he's not lazy, and he has something to prove to Sasuke, to all of his class. Temari brandishes a kunai since her right arm dangles uselessly, unable to even form seals. She tells Neji that her weapon may be broken, but she's still got tricks up her sleeve. Neji nods up at Gaara and tells her that, like him, Neji's the top of his class. The idea of him losing to her is impossible. It's just not in the cards. Her own pride wounded, Temari snarls at him, throwing her kunai straight up and pulling several shuriken from her pack. Throwing 3 at Neji, she catches her now falling kunai and charges at him, successfully taunted. Neji moves as little as possible to dodge her flying weapons. She swings wildly before regaining her calm and trying instead for several fast stabs. Eyes narrowing, Neji takes the gentle palm form once more and strikes her in the side, but it misses. Neji knows that without the Byakugan, it's just too challenging to hit chakra points, but he thought he should nevertheless try, in an effort to conserve chakra. But with every failed gentle palm, that just means more of his own chakra is gone anyway. Pulling open his tool bag, Neji realizes he's out of everything. No kunai, no shuriken, no wire, no more scrolls. The forest of death has exhausted him of everything. His heart falters for a moment and his stance wavers. Despite being disarmed in more ways than one, Temari is still very much uninjured. The gap between them isn't closing fast enough. Seeing his exhaustion grip him, Temari leaps at Neji, and as she body checks him, digs her kunai into his gut, making sure to avoid any vital organs. Falling to the ground with her, Neji brings an arm up her unguarded right side and grips her by the neck. Activating his Byakugan in desperation and instantly suffering from overuse whiplash, Neji pulses chakra into a chakra point at the top of her spine. As they crash to the ground, both lay still for a time. Eventually there's some movement before Neji pushes Temari off him and then heaves himself up onto one elbow. Breathing ragged, Neji slowly rolls to his knees and sits up to stare at her. Though still fully conscious, Temari was struck at one of the hardest chakra points to hit, at the back of the neck. This strike did not paralyze her, but it temporarily and greatly confused her motor skills. Pulling the kunai out of his gut, grunting at the pain, Neji crawls to her side and holds it to her neck as she struggles to move. Satisfied, Anko calls an end to the fight, as well as medics to aid both participants. Though they try to help Neji up, he refuses their immediate aid. Struggling, Neji climbs to his feet on his own and looks up in Sasuke's general direction. He's been blinded by his Byakugan's whiplash since he activated it. He knows where to look, but he can't see much. Looking in Temari's general direction, he shakes his head and repeats, "It just wasn't in the cards." The nearest medic pushes him into a prepared stretcher, and he lets them at last carry him away. Sasuke looks down uncertainly at Neji as they carry him away. He may not have shared any words, but his defiance to the last moments of that fight and the look he gave Sasuke were all challenges for him to do the same to his own opponent. If Shikamaru wasn't going through to the finals, Sasuke needed to, so that they might meet fists in a different arena. They were able to work through their differences for the Forest of Death, but the unbreakable pride of Neji wouldn't crumble to humble so easily. Sasuke was willing to swallow his own pride for their greater success, but if it took his own hand to bring Neji some modesty, then it was well worth it. As the medics leave the room and quiet returns to the room, the black screen immediately begins shuffling through names. Kankuro smirks at the screen as he plays with one of his puppet's wrappings. He'll bring justice where his sister failed. Shino releases a dozen bees to crawl along his arm as he eagerly waits for his turn to arrive. Hinata shuffles uncertainly as she weighs the remaining opponents that she could have.
Karui is repeatedly unsheathing and resheathing her sword as part of an excited itch to see her name. Finally, the two names stop on the screen, and some in the room groan that it's not yet their turn. Naruto Uzumaki versus Atsui of the Cloud. Shikamaru has fulfilled his great wish and sleeps against the wall while the rest watch the ensuing fights. Sakura stands with her Jonin teacher Kurenai as they wait for the other fights to conclude. Temari and Neji were both carted off for medical treatment. That said, Temari's not actually injured, but temporarily disabled. She was only carried off because, well, what else would you do with someone who can't move? And the third match has been decided upon. Naruto Uzumaki versus Atsui of the Cloud. Atsui is older than Naruto by several years. Though he does not have greater chakra reserves, he's definitely physically stronger and more experienced. Despite being friendly with the Leaf Genin before the second phase began, Naruto didn't really get a chance to learn anything about them. Well, Naruto wasn't really interested in learning what they could do at the time. The only thing Naruto can ascertain about Atsui is that he probably uses a sword, judging by the one attached to his back. On the flip side, Naruto is more or less back to 100% since arriving back to the tower and having time to recover. Atsui doesn't look too worn out himself. Trying to start from a basic level, Naruto charges in for some taijutsu, but Atsui responds instantly with the brandishing of his sword. Before Naruto can halt his attack and leap away, Atsui lands a clean strike down Naruto's back. Shocked by the precision strike, Naruto counts himself lucky that he was fast enough to evade a fatal blow. But Naruto was not lucky. Atsui is following orders, and along with his fellow teammates, he is not allowed to kill anyone in this competition. The last thing the Cloud needs right now with the water and rock allying is to get on the Leaf's bad side. Like it or not, the Leaf has historically held the stronger army. Though Atsui's learned throughout his life that Cloud Ninja are trained much more strictly than Leaf Shinobi, it's still a dumb thing to piss off your so far non-violent neighbor. And Atsui is studied up on the Leaf Genin extensively. He knows Naruto is the son of the current Hokage. He also knows that Naruto is the Jinchuriki of the Leaf, like B. But B's an anomaly amongst Jinchuriki, and he's been warned already of the volatility that can potentially come from Naruto and the Sand Kid. While Naruto struggles to nurse the cut on his back, Atsui affords himself the time to glance up at Gaara. One hand clutching his head, Gaara does not seem at all interested in anything that's happening. While Atsui allows Naruto the time to recover, the latter snarls that he was injured already. When he first awoke in the tower, he had a whole day until the Forest of Death ran out of time. Still healing but able to move around, Naruto saw the state that Hinata was in. The absolute resolve that he had in the forest when he first saw her beat up returns to him as he takes the time to look at her cuts. Tenten, while he was unconscious, had been tending to their wounds and removed Hinata's jacket to better apply first aid. But all this did was expose the cuts and bruises up her arms and across her body. Had he not been so sporadic and run off, perhaps he could have saved her from all this hurt. Gritting his teeth, Naruto set all his remaining time into replicating the wind sheath. In conscious memory, he had just done it successfully. The method was fresh in Naruto's mind, and with his purpose refreshed, refined even, Naruto set to work with a pure desire to reliably use it in the future. Stopping his goofy reach around to feel his back, Naruto relaxes and sets his eyes back on Atsui. Naruto's not angry or even excited as he observes Atsui gripping his blade. It's only been a couple seconds since he was cut, and he wonders why Atsui hasn't pushed his assault. The why isn't important though. Atsui is showing him mercy where he shouldn't. Performing the necessary hand seals, Naruto holds out his right arm. The force of the wind ripping around his arm is enough to shred his sleeve to pieces, but leaves his arm undamaged. The trick with the wind sheath is that Naruto has to constantly feed chakra in one direction. Generally, when he tries to exude chakra from his body, it just leaves in all random directions. But for the wind sheath, he needs to constantly be conscious of the direction he's flowing his chakra in addition to giving it elemental form. It's a level of constant attention he's definitely not used to. The Hiraishin is a single burst jutsu.
Naruto only needs to exert his chakra in the direction of his kunai in a quick snap of effort, and then it's done. For him, the wind sheath is on a level he needs time to master, while he's been able to pull off the Hiraishin for as long as he can remember. Though Atsui observes Naruto's sleeve tear away from nothingness, Naruto doesn't give him the time to figure out how that happened and charges a second time. Smiling at the impending clash, Atsui swings his sword down at Naruto, who raises his wind-sheathed arm to guard. On contact with the concentrated force of wind, Atsui's blade is kicked away, and Naruto's guard turns into a dangerous punch. Halting his own momentum, Atsui leans backward so his face doesn't accidentally collide with Naruto's arm, and he leaps backward to regain his bearings. Naruto does not give him time to recover, and as Atsui resets form, Naruto is swinging his dangerous arm at him. Again, instinctively, Atsui brings his sword up to guard, but the wind grabs it and chucks it away. Forget hurting Naruto, Atsui can't make contact with him at all. He knows that if Naruto's arm hits him, that's game over. And being a Jinchuriki and Uzumaki, Atsui knows he can't outlast Naruto. But though he continually clashes his blade to Naruto's arm uselessly, Atsui realizes that he let himself get rattled. Naruto has no idea how to employ his jutsu offensively. Though he appears to be swinging at Atsui, it becomes clear that he's only trying to keep the Cloud Ninja at bay. But it's a shield of wind, and Atsui has the perfect answer for that. Smirking, Atsui swings again at Naruto, and right before his blade strikes the windshield, he charges a line of fire through it. In an instant, his sword triples in size. The actual steel of the blade stays the same size, but the fire he ran through feeds into the windshield and grows explosively in size and intensity. His sword now easily cleaves through the barrier and cuts Naruto's arm. The fiery part of his now massive blade also singes the side of Naruto's face. Dissolving his jutsu and retreating, Naruto cradles his face, hoping that he wasn't just disfigured. Shocked and scared by the sudden wild flames, Naruto hears a voice over his shoulder. Is this all you can do? Turning to face the voice, Naruto sees nothing. It didn't sound like Atsui, but no one else should be involving themselves in the fight, and at the very least, Anko should be calling them out for it. Shaking his head, Naruto refocuses and reaches into his toolkit to pull out nothing? He used 2 scrolls against the Sound Ninja, so where'd he put his third one? Grabbing at his hair and groaning before a confused audience, Naruto realized that he unfurled the 3rd scroll, didn't use it, and then also didn't pick it up again. Even now, it's probably still sitting open on the forest floor. His secret trump card, and now he can't even use it? Pulling a shuriken out instead, with wire attached to it, Naruto plays with the idea of fighting at range. But Naruto doesn't work with wire enough and sighs at the potential logistics. This time though, Atsui doesn't give him time. Naruto hums and haws as he tries to figure out how to fight against a giant fiery sword as it bears down on him again. "Defend yourself!" the voice commands, and Naruto pulls up a rushed windsheath again. This time it doesn't grow the fire any further. It simply adds to its intensity. The blade stops at Naruto's arm. Even though the strike still burns and cuts a bit, it doesn't remove his hand. It should. The windsheath made the flames so intense that they ruined the steel of Atsui's blade. Still useful like a dull knife, Atsui relinquishes his flames to inspect his now glowing sword. Impressed. "You're such a fool. Just give up." The voice rings again. Dropping his physical defense and attempting a dodge, Naruto is barely scraped this time. But all he's taken is damage, and Atsui is still unharmed. Naruto's right arm is burned badly, and the left side of his face is still searing from the previous injury. Your father watches a failure. Reminded that his dad is somewhere in the room, watching him blunder, Naruto is subjected to a wave of shame. As his confidence wavers, the voice gains a deep grumble, and its whispers turn to talking. And nobody likes a failure. For the first time since they arrived at the tower, Gaara's headache seems to clear. He thinks on it for a moment, before staring down at Naruto with pure intensity. Naruto squints as a headache suddenly strikes, but as he watches Atsui, he notices the room seem to get darker, its corners disappearing into the black. Did Atsui perform some sort of jutsu when Naruto wasn't looking? Sakura from up above feels a chill that turns her skin to goosebumps. She looks around the room and realizes it's gotten so dark that she can't see the other genin on the opposite balcony. Sakura looks up at Kurenai, who seems concerned but is otherwise relaxed. On the opposite balcony, Sasuke looks around and wonders if someone laid out a genjutsu. Kakashi tells him and Shikamaru, who's been woken up by this strange feeling, that they're not in danger. Even so, Kakashi leans forward and stares at Minato for any signal he might raise. For some reason, Atsui isn't taking the offensive now, but Naruto has no idea why. Compared to every other moment of the fight, it would be now that he's most vulnerable, with his concentration shattered by the growing headache. Looking at his arm where the wind sheath was, Naruto sees red chakra draping it instead. He raises it up with an open palm, confused. Almost having an out-of-body experience, Naruto watches his open hand close into a tight fist. Watch how I can make success from such failure. The voice growls as it suddenly wrests control from Naruto of his entire body. Naruto grunts with pain as he fights in vain to keep his body to himself. The fox's chakra has already entirely enveloped him. Unlike in their fight against Zabuza, Naruto is still fully conscious and can see and feel everything the fox is doing with his body. As Fox Naruto launches at Atsui, who raises his sword to defend, Fox Naruto grabs and breaks the sword in two. He finishes the lunge by gripping Atsui's sword wrist. Squeezing hard, Fox Naruto crushes Atsui's wrist, who immediately realizes the danger and throws in the towel. Characters like Choji, Ino, Sakura, and even Karui and Kiba are recoiling at Fox Naruto's furious power. But Fox Naruto doesn't care for surrender and attempts further harm. Intercepting him, Minato grabs Fox Naruto and suddenly, both are standing on the roof of the tower. Fox Naruto tries attacking Minato, but the Hokage easily outmaneuvers the primal strikes. Forming several quick seals, Minato lifts Fox Naruto's shirt and places a jutsu directly onto the seal. The muscles in Naruto's abdomen all seize at once and the chakra cloak evaporates. Wobbling, Naruto falls forward into Minato's arms and both reappear on the arena floor. Naruto asks tiredly if that disqualifies him, but Anko says the fourth intercepted after Atsui forfeited, so he's gotta win. Minato holds her judgment and brings her with him to talk with Baki and Darui about the decision. Naruto looks around at everyone watching, but there are no smiles, no celebrations for his victory. Because that was no victory. Yet again, he let the fox take over. He cheated. His own power wasn't enough. He flushes with regret and humiliation and looks over at Atsui, who's letting Karui wrap a bandage around his wrist. Weakly, he tries to apologize to Atsui, but he can't find his voice, burdened by his tainted honor. Noticing the disgraced Naruto, Atsui tells him it's not a big deal. Bijou are hard to deal with sometimes. Looking up at Asuma, Hinata, and Tenten, expecting some encouragement from them, Naruto accidentally sees horror on Tenten, and what he can only describe as disgust from Hinata. Eyes dropping to the floor, Naruto clutches at his stomach and curses the demon within. After a couple minutes, Anko returns to the floor and tells Naruto that he is indeed going on to Phase 3. But Minato tried to prevent that judgment. This is not a relief for Naruto, and though he looks to his dad for encouragement, Minato has vanished from the room. He's left, while Naruto is most alone. Clearing the floor, Anko sets the screen to 2 more names. After the dark end to that fight, the room is rather quiet until the names arrive. Naruto doesn't greet his team as he rejoins them. The space between him and the girls is especially pronounced, and he decides to just move on down to an empty section of the balcony. He settles between his own team and Team Guy. Kiba's the first person to approach him, but the ensuing commentary isn't pleasant for Naruto. Berserk much? Kiba asks him seriously, nodding at the girls on either side who won't even look at Naruto. You keep scaring people like that and you'll never make any friends at all. Looking at the rest of Kiba's team, Naruto sees Rock Lee giving him a measured study. Ino is actually looking at him, but she looks just as terrified as Tenten did. Head dropping again, Naruto approaches Asuma and asks him if he can leave. Asuma tells him no. He needs to stay to support his teammates in their fight. The screen stops at last at the next 2 combatants. Choji Akemichi versus Shino Aburame. Shocked by the result, Choji looks to Kurenai and asks her why he's being pitted against his own teammate. She tells him that the names are chosen indiscriminately, completely at random. Anyone can be pitted against anyone else. That's just how it works. She wishes them both luck and to try their best as they descend the stairs. Shino can tell that Choji's flummoxed by the sheer luck of their names being drawn. Muttering to Choji as they make their way down the stairs, Shino reminds him that they're still allies. They're not fighting to kill each other, they're just sparring. But obviously they have to try a little bit harder than normal here. He asks Choji to not roll over for him. Shino wants a real challenge, and he'll give Choji the same. Agreeing, they walk out to the arena and wait for Anko to signal the start of combat. As soon as Shino releases his first wave of bugs, Choji performs a quick fireball to blast them out of the air. Activating his expansion jutsu, Choji enlarges his hands as he tries to close the distance with Shino, and catches further bugs that try to flank him. In his right hand, he successfully catches one swarm. In his left, he catches a bunch of bees that just immediately sting him across his hand. Instantly withdrawing, Choji's hands return to normal size with the interrupted concentration. Surprising him with a sudden assault of taijutsu, Shino stays on Choji's left side to apply further damage to his stung hand and arm. Retreating from Shino, Choji hears the buzzing surrounding him as Shino tries to close the distance. Doing a body expansion jutsu once more, Choji goes for the human cannonball, banking on the possibility that Shino's not agile enough to dodge at his proximity. As his rolling body chases Shino around the room, Shino explains to him that when he uses expansion jutsu, he's just creating more surface area for his bugs to bite and sting. And indeed, the longer Choji rolls around for, the more stings he incurs. Eventually, the pain overrides his concentration, and the expansion jutsu is cancelled out. Returning to his normal size and faced with a swarm at Shino's back, a now swollen Choji raises his hands and gives up. In seconds, the bugs all disappear into Shino's clothes, and he leans forward to help Choji up. Wincing at the many stings, Choji laughs a little and admits to a few of his rushed decisions in the fight. Shino asks him how much the stings hurts, because he hasn't augmented his bees very much yet. Choji tells him that the pain is more annoying than debilitating, but enough of them, and he's sure he would have been reporting differently. They return to Kurenai's side, who seems pleased with both of their performances. Anko gets the screen going again. Kiba looks around to the remaining genin and wonders who could possibly give him the greatest challenge. If he can remove them from the competition now, then whatever's to come will be much easier to handle. On the flip side, if he got an easy opponent, then the remainder would be tough against tough. He thinks to himself which would be the better outcome at this stage of the competition. Kankuro is getting fidgety, perhaps uncomfortable having to stand beside Gaara alone now that Temari was taken away. They may be brothers, but that has never seemed to affect anything with Gaara's decision-making. Omoi rolls his eyes and glances at the remaining Sand siblings. He hopes that they don't end up fighting. He'd rather humiliate the Sand on a bigger stage than here, with a limited audience. Ino is getting antsy that she hasn't been chosen yet, and with more familiar faces being removed from the roster, that only leaves the mysterious foreign ninja. She'd much rather fight someone she knew than someone she didn't, regardless of who won. It's just a comfort thing for her, especially after everyone was shaken by Naruto's Nine Tails display. At last, the screen stops. Kiba Inuzuka versus Tenten. Kiba Inuzuka versus Tenten. As soon as their names appear, Kiba makes a snide, dismissive comment about being picked against an easy opponent. Might Guy, meanwhile, warns Kiba not to risk underestimating his opponents no matter how confident he is. Even if Might Guy himself were to fight Tenten, he'd still be careful, because it's hard to tell who's got an ace up their sleeve. Not only that, but Kiba hasn't really seen Tenten fight outside of Academy. None of their missions have run tandem with each other. And Tenten wasn't among the genin to fight the elite Team 7. Kiba gives Might Guy the expected yeah before entering the arena. Meanwhile, Asuma shakes Tenten's shoulder, reminding her that her name was drawn. She shrugs and makes a quiet statement that they might as well get it over with. Asuma stops her from leaving and tells her to try her very best, and not assume Kiba's better than her. Though she attempts to evade his eye contact, Asuma goes on and insists that she's a much better fighter than she thinks she is. Not just that, but Akamaru may be a puppy, but he's also trained specifically for combat. He's both an intelligent, self-performing tool for Kiba, but also Kiba's greatest weak point, should she need to exploit. Nodding uncertainly, Tenten makes her way down the stairs. As she and Kiba assume their positions, Tenten glances up towards her team. Naruto is understandably dejected and mopey given the fox's intrusion, but she didn't think he'd remain so distant. Hinata, on the other hand, gives her a silent, smiling nod of encouragement. Anko waves her hand as the green light to the fight, and Kiba wastes no time charging in with Akamaru. Brandishing 2 kunai, Tenten tries to match his ferocious offensive. They clash kunai on one hand, while Kiba catches her other hand with his other. They can only struggle for seconds before Akamaru clamps down on her forearm and weakens the grip on her kunai. Releasing the weapon, Tenten twists in just such a way that she's able to pull the still clamping Akamaru into her other kunai. As the puppy releases grip to evade the blade, Kiba reaches a stab at Tenten. Charging her weapon hand with directionless lightning, she forces Kiba to temporarily retreat. Though this rattles Kiba, his release is earth, and he can't reliably overpower her element. If he wanted to exhaust himself, it would be doable, but the cost was so high. Picking up her dropped kunai, Tenten thrusts a kick in Kiba's direction, who leaps backward several steps to dodge. Pulling out a length of wire, she throws her kunai like a curveball behind Kiba, hoping to tie him up. Akamaru, however, chases the kunai and catches it out of the air as Kiba begins his second assault. Tugging hard on the wire, Tenten causes Akamaru to fly, but does not halt his offensive. Irked and surprised at how well Kiba stays in close proximity, Tenten wonders how she'll manage to outmaneuver him. She hardly has time to think, as she struggles to keep up with his onslaught combined with Akamaru's. The puppy isn't causing any real harm, but running interception on several of her attacks have already proven him an annoyance. Meanwhile, Kiba's shocked that Tenten's able to keep up in taijutsu with him, even while Akamaru is trying everything to distract her. Every time he throws a punch or hurls some shuriken, Tenten already seems to be countering it. But at the end of the day, Kiba knows he'll win a fight of attrition. If he can't win a battle of physical domination, all he needs to do is wait for her to get tired. There are few of the Leaf Genin that can outlast him after all. Kiba is less technical than Tenten with weaponry, but he's far more savage with his strikes, seemingly sacrificing defense to push her as much as possible. Tenten, meanwhile, is searching for a hole in his offense so she might push back even a little bit. She knows herself that hers is a battle against time. She has no discernible chakra to wield on a good day, never mind in the midst of a battle. She needs to lean on her weapons and physical output as much as possible. Akamaru is also striking in perfect flow with Kiba. The two don't seemingly communicate, but their attacks have a clever cooperation between them. Discouraged slightly by her foe, Tenten sees in her mind's eye a vision of Tsunade insulting her. She'll never amount to anything after all, so why is she trying so hard if it'll end in failure? Shaking her head as sparks fly in their fierce fight, Tenten reminds herself that it was an illusion, feeding directly on her own fears. She thinks of Naruto while she clashes with Kiba, remembering that despite being hated by the village, Naruto is still here, still trying to get better. He might keep to himself, but through it all, she thinks that he has high aspirations. If anyone has a life of failure ahead of them, wouldn't he be the most likely for it? But he's still trying. He's still pushing. Every time he's knocked down, he just seems to get right back up. There's no reason why she can't do the same. Tenten notices within Kiba's seemingly perfect flow of attacks that there's some predictability. Nearly every time Kiba tries to grapple with her, Akamaru too tries to pin one of her limbs. Simultaneously, whenever Kiba goes for an in-and-out assault, Akamaru too launches a quick bite and a quick retreat. As she tries to strike with weapons, Kiba seems to inevitably grapple. But if she goes for pure taijutsu, he drops grappling and matches her taijutsu. She is also trying to keep hold of her kunai without letting them drop across the arena. So far, she's kept up predictability herself as well, always wielding 2 kunai together. On this go, however, she pulls out a smoke bomb in her left hand, and as soon as Kiba tries reaching for her wrist, she drops the bomb. As she hopes, he withdraws to evade the smoke, likely due to his sensitive nose. He taunts her in this moment, remarking that he can still smell exactly where she is within the smoke. Pulling out a scroll, Tenten conjures a rain of her own weapons from within cover. As her shuriken and kunai fly out and at Kiba, he shuts up and dances around in a desperate attempt to avoid injury. While he's distracted by the flying weapons, Tenten pulls out another scroll and conjures a foldable wind demon shuriken. Flying out from the dispersing smoke with a fully brandished shuriken, Tenten swings it as hard as she can, and Kiba blocks it with a kunai. The way Tenten's wielding the shuriken allows its blades to collapse back in on themselves off her own momentum. This creates several more kicks of force as the other three blades snap into position against Kiba's kunai, saving Tenten additional energy on keeping Kiba busy. Unable to hold up against the momentum of the blade, Kiba relinquishes the struggle to Tenten as he drops his kunai and dodges away from the blade. Asuma grins widely at Tenten's clever use of the shuriken and wonders how she came up with the tactic. Meanwhile, Naruto's forgotten his sadness in the hype of Tenten turning the tide in her favor. Across the balconies, most everyone is paying attention now. Omoi has gotten up and together with his teammates, watches on with interest at Tenten's ability to stay in the match. Only Gaara is uninterested, but that dude's not exactly a master of close-range tactics. Fully brandishing the shuriken once more, unfolding it completely, Tenten also creates more distance. She's grateful for the moment of reprieve as Kiba stares at her weapon. He's completely shaken that she'd have such a large weapon at her disposal. Tenten does not want to betray weakness in front of Kiba, but she can't keep matching his pace. Cutting his thumb, Kiba thrusts a hand to the floor and summons two more ninja dogs. Might Guy shakes his head slightly, disappointed that Kiba's allowed himself to get flustered. Ninja dogs are primarily for scouting, not combat, and Kiba knows that. They can do some damage, but that's certainly not their specialty. All he's risking in this summoning is getting the ninja dogs injured. As she sees Kiba whispering to the dogs, Tenten glances up at her team and sees Naruto wide-eyed, gripping the balcony with enough force to turn his knuckles white. Hinata is the world's quietest cheerleader, and Asuma-sensei is now leaning forward, nodding at her. Smile creeping across her face, pride swelling, Tenten pulls out her third and final scroll. Though the dogs begin to mobilize with Kiba's instruction, Tenten's already summoning her last item. Out of her last scroll, she summons Kiba. What? No, her swords are also called Kiba. Boy, this is awkward. Okay, henceforth, Kiba will be referred to as Dog Boy, and Kiba will continue to be called Kiba. Dog Boy's alarmed at the sight of Kiba, wondering how Tenten got her hands on such an exotic weapon. Handling Kiba with both hands, Tenten shifts her grip uncertainly as if she's never handled Kiba before or beheld the majesty. I can't do this. At some point this will turn into weird sexual innuendo, if it hasn't already. Okay, Dog Boy will go back to being Kiba, and Kiba will just be her swords. With just the slightest exertion of chakra, the swords snap to life with lightning coursing through them. The Cloud Ninja's interest has turned to concern as they begin whispering amongst themselves upon witnessing her newly obtained swords. The summoned dog's hair stands on end at the prospect of being zapped by those blades, but they nevertheless follow Kiba's lead, who doesn't back down at the sight. Meeting again, Kiba finds that he can't even touch her hands anymore, as the residual electricity from within the blades seems to be protecting her, arcing towards any foreign body. Growling at these unfair weapons, Kiba tells Tenten that a little bit of pain won't stop him from attacking her. Pulling out another kunai, Kiba charges in, even as Rock Lee and Ino both shout for him to stop. In his anger, he has forgotten what a lightning-charged blade does to a non-lightning-charged blade. Swinging her swords to meet him, hers slice through the kunai like a hot knife through butter, and Kiba receives a jolting cut to the front of his shoulder. As he yelps in pain, the ninja dogs and Akamaru dive at her rear flank to distract her. Twirling in place with the other sword, it just takes one swipe to dissuade the dogs. Asuma's smile fades as he watches Tenten fight. Ordinarily, one could consider her performance exemplary. However, famous swords like hers often have drawbacks to them, and Asuma has spotted this drawback. Tenten's remaining time has sped up. With the dogs kept at bay with one blade, Tenten keeps Kiba on his heels with the other. But she's sweating now, and she feels very tired. Landing another strike against a rattled Kiba, she finally knocks him off his feet. Keeping one sword trained on his dogs, Tenten puts the other to his throat and asks him how far she needs to go to get him to give up. Kiba of course tells her he'll never give up, even against such a stupid sword, but the call isn't his to make. Anko calls the fight off, remarking that if this were the real world, Tenten wouldn't have paused to talk just now. It just takes a moment of weakness, and even the stronger opponent will lose. Accidentally releasing her blades, Tenten falls to her knees, exhausted. The blades continue to snap with electricity for several seconds before losing their charge. Asuma lands beside her and picks up the swords. He tells her that they're very dangerous for her to wield. Tenten confirms that Lord Jiraiya explained their drawback to her already, but she just didn't expect them to take such a toll in such a short period of time. Kiba tries complaining that he only lost the match because she has a weapon she can't even handle, but the reverse Uno card is pulled on him. Anko wonders who in the room can summon yet. Well, he can. Meanwhile, Tenten is discouraged even in her victory. She's glad to be moving on, but disheartened that she can't reliably use the Kiba swords in a serious fight. As she rejoins her team atop the balcony, they are joined by Omoi, of all people? He gives sidelong glances at Hinata, who averts her gaze, and at Naruto, who squints back at him. He mutters at Tenten, flubbing over his words before clearly asking where she got the swords. She asks him if he recognizes her, ignoring his question, but he shrugs uncertainly. Rolling her eyes, she tells him to come back when he remembers. Awkwardly standing there for several more seconds, Omoi eventually sidles toward the stairs and returns to his group. Tenten watches him walk across the floor below and smiles, happy that she's even impressed the Cloud Ninja. She sighs and suddenly feels lightheaded, steadied only by a hand from Asuma. He asks her if she'd like to get some medical aid, but she insists that she can at least watch until the end. The screen snaps through 8 remaining names for several seconds before landing on Rock Lee versus Hinata Hyuga. Though she's more or less recovered physically, Hinata's already small confidence is also shot. She knows she won't perform to the standard that Tenten just did, and of course doesn't want to perform to Naruto's standard. She feels a little powerless that Naruto didn't seek comfort from her and kept his distance after his fight. He looked so incredibly disappointed when he looked up at her after his fight. But she's never seen the fox take control of him. She doesn't know the first thing she could say to him. And never mind that, due to her blunder in the forest, her entire team was nearly taken out. Even though at no point no one blamed her for the screw-up, she knows it's her fault. It's only fair that she took the Sound Team's attacks and not Naruto or Tenten. And now she's up against a taijutsu specialist. She's the heir of the Hyuga house, a house known for their special taijutsu. She cannot bring shame to them too by losing to Rock Lee. Activating her Byakugan, Hinata assumes the gentle fist stance. Rock Lee, on the other hand, is so fired up that, unlike all the other contestants until now, he leaps from the balcony to his spot in the arena below. When the fight starts, Rock Lee dives hard. With some experience from fighting Neji, Lee smartly evades every strike Hinata tries to make. If she can't hit her target, then she can do no damage. Rock Lee doesn't just have the technical aspect down, he's also extremely fast. Hinata's frankly shocked as she twirls to hit him and he seemingly vanishes before her eyes. Even with her Byakugan, she has difficulty keeping up with his position. Perturbed, Hinata attempts to throw kunai into the mix, but Rock Lee catches her hand at the wrist and forces her to drop it. A quick technique and inspiration he drew from Kiba's match with Tenten minutes ago. It's evident that up to this point, he's been taking it easy on her. If he was that fast to begin with, how would he not have hit her yet? Shocked that he's as good as he is, Hinata crumbles and tries to give up. But she's too quiet, and Rock Lee thumps her hard over the top of the head, knocking her out. He bows to her in quiet respect. She unfortunately drew one of the shortest straws in this mini tournament. Rock Lee was firing on all cylinders, and Hinata's fire had been snuffed out already. The match starts and finishes in seconds, and is enough for Omoi to return to relaxing against the wall and missing the fights. Appearing by Hinata's side, Asuma kneels and picks her up, thanking Rock Lee for not being excessive. Simultaneously, Asuma wonders to himself how he can build her confidence. He's already heard the story of their fight in the forest, and knew that would shake her ability to perform here. In fact, he was quite confident she would lose. Rock Lee is far too specialized to be outdone in taijutsu. Even if Hinata turned to ninjutsu or genjutsu, Asuma thinks it still wouldn't have been enough. Sometimes the matchups are just too challenging to even consider a win. Lord Jiraiya stands atop a very large and very old tree. Surrounding him are 12 of the total 30 Anbu, as he holds a special meeting with them regarding the upcoming Phase 3 of the Chunin exams. As he's about to lead into his next point, Minato is suddenly standing behind him. With a quick nod of his head, Minato dismisses the Anbu, who all vanish from atop the tree. Jiraiya turns to him and asks what's so important that they need to cancel meetings. Not just that, isn't Minato supposed to be at the Forest of Death right now? Sternly, Minato asks Jiraiya why Naruto's seal has already loosened, even though they've just reinforced it. Jiraiya scoffs and tries to play the question off as some joke, not to mock, but due to the absurdity of the context. Unamused, Minato puts a finger to Jiraiya's chest that stops him in his place. Glancing at Minato's finger, Jiraiya quietly asks him what happened. Minato tells him of Naruto's fight, and how the fox took control of his body before his very eyes. He had to step in and stop it. Pushing with his finger, Minato forces Jiraiya back a step and demands to know why it is happening. Jiraiya, a Sannin, designed the seal. How could it crack so easily? Jiraiya puts his hands up in submission and tells Minato that tailed beasts are like meteors. The idea of trapping one inside a human is ludicrous. Minato reminds Jiraiya that Kushina had no problems keeping the Nine Tails contained, so why does his son keep falling victim to it? Jiraiya tells Minato that Kushina grew up during a raging war. The things that scare Naruto today would not have scared him had he grown up in the same era. She was a product of her time, and was likely able to handle the fox better than Naruto. Or perhaps over time, and having repeated imprisonment in multiple hosts, has just made the fox angry. Clenching his teeth, Minato complains that the peaceful life he thought his son would get isn't so at all. Turning to Jiraiya, he asks him for a favor over the next few days. Back in the tower, Anko is letting the screen fly through names once more. Karui asks Omoi if they'll end up pitted against each other at this rate. Omoi tells her that he'd win if that happened, sparking rage from Karui. However, before she can literally beat him to a pulp, the names on the screen slam to a halt. Sasuke Uchiha versus Kankuro of the Wind. Sasuke has had the luck of being able to recover as he's watched the fights. However, an extra hour isn't enough time to have him gained back much more than his breath. On the other hand, Kankuro looks like he hasn't just endured 5 days in that forest. Then again, Sasuke thinks to himself, he hasn't. The Sand siblings got back in 18 hours. Kankuro's so well rested he may have put on weight. The downside, however, is that one of Kankuro's 2 puppets, Crow, was destroyed by the Earth Ninja. He only has Black Ant to aid him. Black Ant is a special puppet with the ability to imprison foes for quick and easy executions. Sasuke's never seen or even heard of a puppeteer before and needs to figure out how to fight inanimate objects. It's obvious to him that Kankuro somehow controls it, but without the how, he can only rely on destroying the puppet or its master. Kankuro tosses periodic shuriken while Sasuke is attempting to dodge Black Ant's large sweeping strikes. But Sasuke is totally exhausted and trips when he attempts to avoid a wide strike from Black Ant. Taking full opportunity, Kankuro traps Sasuke inside of Black Ant, whose arms detach and reveal poisoned blades. Surprised by the hollow body of Black Ant, Sasuke is stunned by how tough its body is as he slams his fists and feet against it. Kankuro warns Anko that the next step of his tactic for this puppet might have a lethal outcome, but goes ahead with it anyway. Black Ant's arms rotate around the barrel body as they line up with the small slits they're meant to slip through. Content with his aim, Kankuro thrusts all the blades toward the body at the same time. Black Ant's body suddenly explodes, sending its shattered remains scattering across the arena. From within the prison, Sasuke decides to sacrifice the use of his Sharingan for the fight to eke out one last ninjutsu, the boulder that he'd already copied. Conjuring it from within such a small space would doubtlessly cause problems for him, but if he stayed there any longer, he was bound to lose anyway. Flashing into existence, the boulder pushes Sasuke hard against the back wall of Black Ant, forcing him to survive a crushing as the rest of the boulder explodes out in every other direction. As Sasuke collapses to the ground, his boulder thrusts forward in a hail of splintered wood, and Kankuro barely dodges out of its way, his foot struck by the boulder. Limping only slightly, Kankuro looks at his second destroyed puppet in shock. Willing himself up, Sasuke pulls out his last tool, a length of wire. Wrapping his forearm sleeves around his hands to protect them from the wire, he wraps it tight around them. Still in control of Black Ant's arms, Kankuro regains focus and turns them on Sasuke. For context, I'm just going to use kunai on screen for Kankuro's puppet arms. Couldn't find a picture of them alone to save my life. Without his Sharingan, it takes far more deliberate action to dodge the thrusting knives. Loosening the wire so it forms a loop in the middle, he successfully catches one of the flying arms in that loop before pulling tight and preventing its escape. Crushing the mechanism, Sasuke frees the blade and brandishes it against Kankuro, who's only growing more irked. Still dodging, Sasuke wraps the wire around the blade so he can use it as a mid-range bladed sling. Sasuke keeps it drawn in so Kankuro can't even tell that the two items have been tied together. As Sasuke dodges the enemy's blades, he slowly gets closer to Kankuro until his weapon is within range. In a showy spin, Sasuke flourishes at its apex by hurling the blade at Kankuro. Kankuro dodges too slowly again, as he was mounting his own strike. As Sasuke is struck in the back by a blade, Kankuro is also cut in the arm. Sasuke gives a slight tug and retrieves his sword, to Kankuro's fury. Rattled, his puppet arms fall uselessly to the ground as Sasuke begins spinning the blade in hand and closing the remaining distance to Kankuro. In a panic, he attaches several chakra strings to the armored pieces of Black Ant and pulls them to himself to guard against Sasuke's strike. Though he protects his chest and head, Sasuke aims instead for his unprotected legs. Cut twice now by a poisoned blade, Kankuro already feels their effects, as his arm goes numb and his leg gets weak. Willing himself to his feet, Kankuro engages the injured Sasuke and falls right through him. A knee to his back, Kankuro is pinned by Sasuke and one of Kankuro's pickpocketed kunai. Anko then calls an end to the match and gets the names on the screen flying again. Sakura yells down at Sasuke that he should get his own tricks instead of stealing magnificent genjutsu ideas from her. Turning to look at Sakura up above, Sasuke smirks and gives her a wave of recognition. Sasuke had actually stored a genjutsu while watching Sakura fight. Of all the genin, Sakura uses low chakra jutsu with ultra precision. It was the best jutsu for Sasuke to mirror in his state. As Sasuke tries walking back to his team, the poison spreading through his back causes pins and needles across his arms and legs. Kankuro is made then to provide the antidote for them both. By the time Sasuke and Kankuro have been taken care of and cleared from the arena, the names have finally stopped. Omoi of the Cloud versus Ino Yamanaka. Jumping to his feet, Omoi descends the stairs and enters the arena. The toothpick he'd been playing with before, he places firmly in his mouth and crosses his arms in wait for Ino to come down. Ino shivers at her opponent's demeanor. Omoi seemed like a half-wit when he was trying to speak to Tenten earlier, but now he seems like the personification of intimidation. In order to get down the stairs, Ino has to pass by Team Asuma, but she's become incredibly unsure of Naruto. She didn't realize the fox could so easily burst from him. At any point, could the fox again jump out of him? How could Naruto ever be trusted with such a beast inside of him? Slowly creeping past him, Ino can't help but stare at him, and Naruto looks at her uncertainly as well. He seems to sense her newfound concern about him. Clearing her throat, Ino looks away from him and descends the stairs. Never mind him, she has to somehow fight Omoi. She knows nothing about him, and the sword on his back suggests a wildly different fighting style than she has. Goosebumps run down her skin as she stands opposite him and panics about how she'll fight him. In a shocking shattering of her confidence, Ino shakes her head at Omoi and mouths the words, "Give up." Looking up at the balconies, she sees Shikamaru has gotten up to watch. She then looks for Choji, Kiba, and Rock Lee to ground her once more in courage. But she's allowed herself to completely lose her bearings as Omoi appears beside her, ramming his fist into her gut. Omoi remarks that she has no meat on her bones, so strikes will inevitably hurt more. Anko had already started the match, but Ino had uncharacteristically distracted herself with her onlookers. Lee shouts for her to focus, and Kiba tells her that she can do this. Choji cheers loudly and unintelligibly on the opposite balcony. Cracking his knuckles, Omoi surges some of his lightning through his hands as a show of power and control. While Omoi stands dismissively above her, Ino forms several hand seals while pretending to be on her knees. Rising fast, she finishes her water wall jutsu, encasing and dousing Omoi. As the water created from the jutsu forms a wide puddle across the floor, Ino taunts Omoi with any lightning use as she creates more distance. He might just electrocute himself now that he's drenched. But Omoi remarks that he doesn't need lightning to take care of her. Keeping his sword sheathed, he appears beside her in another burst of speed. As he reaches to hook her head into a submission lock, Ino catches him and locks their arms together. Omoi wonders what she'll do next, pausing to see. She presses her fingers together and activates her mind transfer jutsu. Reflexively, Omoi charges lightning through his body against the unknown jutsu. As her defenseless body is struck by lightning, Ino's consciousness is also struck with indecision to return as it enters Omoi's body. This confusion causes both their bodies to fall limp for a time, as both are also being jolted by his lightning. Only seconds pass and Ino returns to her body, rolling away to escape the lightning. Tired and aching, Ino allows herself a moment to catch her breath, since victims of the mind transfer are often out for several more seconds than she. When she looks up to see what state Omoi's in, he kicks her in the face and knocks her out. Putting a new toothpick in his mouth, Omoi looks down at her, intrigued by what she was trying to do. Leaf ninja with Hiden techniques are a subject of curiosity for the Cloud, like watching the fat kid enlarge his body even more. Karui shouts down to him that he beat up a defenseless little girl, and Omoi looks up at her and shrugs like he doesn't care. A medical team comes down to retrieve Ino, though she's not too battered. Jumping down to meet him in the arena, Karui punches him in the shoulder and tells him to get out of her arena. With only 2 contestants left, Anko needs not run the randomizer. Gaara comes down in much the same way as he does in canon, but Karui is not at all dissuaded as she focuses on him with fury drawn on her face. Before Anko has set action for the fight, Karui draws her sword. She knows that Gaara is the Jinchuriki of the sand and has an ungodly amount of chakra at his fingertips. She also knows that B, the Cloud's own Jinchuriki, is well known to rein in his power, but others are not going to be so measured. Lip curling into a snarl, Karui initiates her first tactic. She tells him that he and his entire nation are cowards that hide in the safe shadows of the leaf to evade the endless war. All this bloodshed, all this misery, the deaths, the destruction, everything, and the nation has cowered in their sand castles. He stares at her mutely as she complains about the sand's apparent transgressions. Had they chosen a side, any side, at any point, the war of the last 40 years would have come to an end by now. To the Cloud, the sand is the sole reason why the war has never ended. They might be weak and cowardly, even spineless, but Jinchuriki are hard to come by. All it takes is one to turn the tides, and they've been hiding all this time. They've been doing nothing but grow rusty and soft. Running lightning through her blade, Karui leaps through the air and drives it down at Gaara furiously. Gaara doesn't even try to defend, as her sword strikes him clean on the top of his shoulder. Her lightning infusion cuts through his sand armor at first, but his sand rushes to reinforce that point in his armor faster than she can cut through it. Before she knows it, His charring sand covers her sword completely and seals it against his shoulder, so she can't even pull it away now. Expecting a counterattack, Karui releases her stuck sword and leaps backward. Gaara relaxes the sand on his shoulder and breaks the sword free. He looks at the sword for only a moment before throwing it back to Karui. He tells her to try again, as many times as she wants. At this time, Ino re-enters the arena, having woken from her knockout. Not wanting to interrupt the fight, she stays at the entrance and watches. Temari stands with her, having regained enough motor function to walk around, and eager to see who her brother will destroy. Hinata too stands beside, peeking out to watch the fight. Karui knows that in a battle of chakra, Gaara will win, but she never expected his inferior element would be able to so clearly dominate hers. Theirs was the best genin team of the Cloud Village chosen to come for these exams, and Gaara is still making her look like a chump. Clicking her tongue in annoyance that Omoi might be the only one to move on, Karui charges lightning into her sword again. Instead of swinging it at Gaara, she goes for a powerful jab. But like before, her sword strikes his sand armor and just stops, as more sand tries to coil around her blade. She's never fought an earth element and lost before. Perhaps she underestimated the power of an unfiltered Jinchuriki. All this time that she's been fighting, she failed to notice the sand collecting on the ground around her. Before she can pull back and try a different form of offense, the sand springs to life around her and traps her in a sealed cocoon of sand. Lifting his hand up, he activates his sand coffin jutsu. Only due to her last-ditch surge of lightning is Karui able to weaken the force of his sand and escape a deadly fate. Drawing even more sand to his cocoon, Gaara repeats the jutsu. Catching his hand and intercepting the jutsu, Darui tells him to release her. Surprised that the Jonin got so close to him so quickly, Gaara attempts to carry on anyway. Brandishing black lightning, Darui's bare hand easily cuts through Gaara's sand armor and into his flesh. Now that Darui's made him bleed his own blood, Gaara begins to have a panic attack. Beginning his transition to beast mode, Gaara screams as he grasps at his head, and Baki appears beside him, applying a seal to him, immediately calming the beast within him. Shocked by the near explosion of a second Jinchuriki, Ino wonders why the villages are putting these bombs inside children. She shakes her head, repulsed by the idea. Temari tries to calm Ino, telling her that Gaara has surprising control over his beast, despite acting crazy sometimes. Hinata too tries to affirm that Naruto isn't a ticking time bomb. Being in the same team as him, this was the first time she'd ever seen him lose control. Raido jumps in as Darui and Baki nearly come to blows with one another. The sand cocoon loosens and frees Karui, who luckily still draws breath. When his words don't work and his body is all he can manage to keep the two separated, Raido shouts for Naruto to get his dad. Finally, given reasonable permission to use the Flying Raijin, Naruto forms the necessary seals and finds himself in a tree. In front of him, Minato and Jiraiya stand, looking down at him. He tells them about the problem with the sand and cloud in the tower, and Minato immediately travels with him back to the tower. Though Naruto reappears beside Asuma, his dad is already beside Raido, helping him push the two men apart. Minato shouts for the proctor to finish up, as he grabs hold of Darui and Baki, and Raido touches his shoulder, and all four vanish from the room. A sedated Gaara falls backward, caught by Temari. After waiting for everyone to relax a bit, Anko gets a medical team in for Karui and calls all the past contestants to come forward. Neji Hyuga is still in medical treatment, so his name will be drawn by the proctor. Name drawing? Yes! Anko explains to everyone that her part in the exams is done, and so Phase 3 will be watched over by Iruka Umino, who appears in a burst of cloud beside her. All the Leaf Genin obviously recognize him as their teacher from the academy, so he gets a warm reception. However, sparing no pleasantries in this moment, Iruka tells them that he'll explain what's to come next. He explains to everyone that Phase 3 is a tournament style much like they just had. However, there is a 2-week rest period between now and then, so that everyone may get last-minute training in and heal up. But they're all to draw their names now, so they can train for their specific opponents and show the best of what they can do before the judges.
One by one, they all grab their tickets and return to their lineup. They show their numbers to Iruka, and he writes them on the board for the Phase 3 tournament. In the first bracket, it's Naruto Uzumaki versus Sakura Haruno. Naruto giggles at his pick and points at Sakura smugly. She turns stern and gives him a threatening invitation to come closer. In the second bracket, it's Tenten of the Leaf versus Omoi of the Cloud. Omoi perks up at his coming opponent, excited to clash against the Kiba blades. Tenten's a little uneasy. Even with her special swords, Omoi hasn't shown his sword skill yet. She put all her abilities out there for everyone to see, but Omoi showed nothing. In the third bracket, it's Shino Aburame versus Gaara of the Sand. Shino and Gaara stand unchanging at their drawn lots. Shino's brows furl ever so slightly, little enough that no one notices. He already has a plan. In the fourth bracket, it's Rock Lee versus Sasuke Uchiha. Rock Lee looks over at Sasuke, curious how the Sharingan would fare against him versus the Byakugan. Sasuke meets his gaze, confident that working from 100%, Rock Lee stood no chance against him. And Neji gets a bye in the first round. Satisfied with the lots drawn, Iruka turns to them all. He tells them they're free to do absolutely anything in terms of training leading up to the Phase 3 tournament. He tells them that not just the 3 Kage, but all the Lords of the Land and various Jonin and Chunin will be watching their next fight. Their sole goal is to impress the people that matter. Showboating or prolonging a fight for the sake of a grudge will impress no one. You will humiliate your foe and automatically fail yourself. Additionally, killing is officially forbidden from this point onward. What they do in that final arena must be controlled. With the rules and gravity of their final phase explained, Iruka claps his hands together and dismisses them. In 2 weeks, they're all to meet again in a grand arena with a vast audience.